All right, welcome in everybody. I'll do a little bit of housekeeping as everyone starts to roll in here, gets through the opening ad break and all that good stuff. For those of you watching on a rewatch, definitely remember to like the stream. And also, I've got a poll going in the chat, which we will be sort of checking on the results of as we go here, asking you all who did better in their first days on the job, Aegon or Rhaenyra. So, if you're watching on rewatch, definitely feel free to make your opinions on that known down there in the comments as well. Maybe a future video topic that I am planning to be doing is discussing the comparison between the first days of both of these rulers because there are definitely a lot of parallels that have been drawn. Um, so yeah, welcome to everybody who is joining me in the live chat. Thank you all for being here, and let's get started here. Uh, yeah, we will talk about this. This was a wild move. Not the greatest politics going on there from Rhaenyra, in my personal opinion. Um, but it is what it is. You're not late at all. You're here within the first minute of the stream, so no worries about that at all. Um, and yeah, in regards to the poll that I've got running in chat, it pains you to say that Aegon had the better first few days. I do tend to agree, even though I believe Rhaenyra is the rightful heir, the one who should have inherited from Viserys. Yeah, Aegon seems to have at least in his first few days, done a bit of a better job with it. Granted, I will say, and this is another thing that I'll have to cover in that video if I do make it, Rhaenyra received the throne in a much tougher position, with the entire treasury being gone and the city starving, whereas Aegon was, coronated during a time of peace and prosperity and everyone cheering for him. So yeah, it is a interesting discussion that I do think might be worthy of a video at some point in the next week or two. Um, yeah, she's got loads of problems and no money. That pretty much does sum it up for sure. And yes, Quinn and Fantasy Haven just wrapped up. I was kind of hoping I wouldn't collide with their stream, and yeah, the timing worked out really well on that one. So yeah, we are rolling in here. The crowd has assembled, so it's about time to get started in proper discussing this episode. Um, yeah, no, Torrin Manderley. We'll talk about him as we go through the scenes, but yes, so I was like, where do I recognize Torrin Manderley's actor from? And then I realized he's the dude from Fantastic Beasts. I was like, he looks like a funny guy. I haven't actually seen those movies, but I just seen like clips of him being comedic relief. I'm like, where I've seen that guy's face before. And I think he's funny. Why what is he doing in my Game of Thrones? And yeah, he should be an interesting character for sure. I mean, I think they are actually setting him up to potentially be the Master of Coin. That's a thing for the like next episode preview or whatever. Um, if you don't want to hear anything about the next episode preview, mute for like 10 seconds. But so Massaria said that the problem with all the gold they could potentially solve by finding a master of coin, and then the people will blame him. And I do tend to wonder if they're going to make Torrin Manderley their master of coin and let the people blame him. And yes, this is the stuff, Lionel. Absolutely. And yeah, I really liked the episode. I thought it was really good. Lots of drama, people talking in rooms, but also like just the pressure that was building on Rhaenyra throughout the entire episode, showing that like, okay, yeah, you've taken the throne now with your dragons, but you actually have to do politics now. And sometimes politics are harder than flying into town on a dragon and everyone bowing to you. So yeah, I thought it was a really good episode, and let's get started going scene by scene here. Um, and yeah, this is a good question actually as well. If anyone has thoughts on this, either in comments later or in the chat, has anyone entered their rulership with as hard of circumstances as what Rhaenyra is coming into here, with the realm in chaos, a bunch of people disputing her rule. The treasury has just been completely plundered to the point where they just can't afford anything for more than like a week or two of food for her council and her court. Um, yeah, it's an interesting question. I haven't thought about it deeply. I could maybe think if I like maybe there is someone, but off the top of my head, no one immediately comes to mind. There may be someone I'm forgetting. But anyway, we start off scene one here with Ormond Hightower aura farming. He is a professional aura farmer back in Old Town, and now he is heading out and doing a war, and he has not given up his true passion, which is mogging and looking good in his armor. Um, Tommen, as someone who has started in a harder position, maybe, but Tommen, at least in the books, Tommen is like a little baby child. Um, so he, to the extent that he is facing as difficult a circumstance, he doesn't even realize it really. But that is fair. He is in a lot of debt. His regent is his mother, who is slowly losing it. So yeah, no, that's a fair shout. He had a rough beginning to things. Um, but yeah, so Daemon, not to be outdone by Ormond farming Hightower, uh, Aura farming Ormond, I should say. um, he uh he brings his three dragons and stares down their army and basically tells them you need to surrender. He says there's a new queen, she sits her father's throne, and Ormond's like, "Yeah, we heard rumors about that." And Daemon's like, "Yeah, and also we killed your uncle and a bunch of your guardsmen. So time to swear fealty and go home." He says, "You may return to Old Town and live your lives in peace." And I just love this little moment of Daemon just being like, "Peace or whatever you want, I guess." Um, and yeah, this is a theme absolutely of this episode, and it's a thing that I definitely noticed on my rewatch as well. She wasn't really raised to be the greatest ruler. She was a cupbearer, as he said, as they say here, on some of her father's small council, and she handled business with the lords when they made her choose a husband terribly. Yes, she it is a character trait of Rhaenyra throughout the entire series that she does politics kind of badly. She she like even during Aegon's second name day when they're on the hunt or whatever, and Rhaenyra is like in the tent with all of the noble ladies and things like that, she ends up like getting into a fight with the Red Wines, like Lady Redwine. She like starts insulting her and arguing with her. Um, and yeah, she sent Lucerys with a letter to a lord that didn't know how to read. And rather than like going with an offer, she apparently just like reminded him of the oath that his father swore or something. So like we don't really know exactly what was in the letter, but whatever was in the letter made him angry. So unless it's complete maester interference, that was some bad politics as well. Um, but yes, and yeah, no, this is another thing. This is another thing that I'm really looking forward to, is figuring out what exactly goes on with the sheep stealer plot line, because yeah, Damon at this point is being sent to the Vale, and he has been told he needs to find sheep stealer. So that's going to be some interesting tension whenever that does come about. Um, but yes, so he suggests that they can return to Old Town in peace. And Ormond is doubting at this point whether he should bend the knee or whatever. And Damon asks Ulf, would you like to be Lord of Old Town? And Ulf's like, me? Are you serious? Like, he doesn't quite realize, like, that's not going to happen. And it's very funny reaction. But then in the end, Ormond is like, well, if it were up to me, I would resist, but I have other lives to think about. So he bends the knee and swears fealty to Queen Rhaenyra as the rightful queen and heir to Viserys. And then Damon's like, oh, wait, also, by the way, I need my nephew Darren. He's a contender to the throne, and we need to bring him back to King's Landing. So they bring out Darren, and for I assume all of you have now seen the episode. If you're watching this, we know this is actually a fake Darren. and it's very funny to watch Tessarion like do a little double take. Like, wait, they're saying that's Darren. That's not Darren. Like the dragon is like confused and just like looking at this person who is dressed up, cosplaying his rider who he's bonded with. I thought that was a nice little touch, for sure. That yeah, Tessarion is playing along, or at least to the extent that Tessarion is able to play along. Um, but yes, and yeah. I have seen people raise the question of like, why do they not take Tessarion with them to the capital? I would imagine. I mean, there is of course the explanation of so that the story can happen from the writers, but I would imagine Damon's idea is like, okay, a dragon separated from the rider is not dangerous, whereas flying a potentially hostile dragon into King's Landing could lead to Darren doing something daring. He could do a he could do like a solo, like, oh, I may die, but I'm gonna take out Rhaenyra with my dragon when I land. Like if he tells him to fly back to King's Landing on his dragon, that does make it potentially more dangerous. But also think about like the situation that this fake kid is in, because he's never ridden a dragon before, and he has to pretend that he is very experienced at riding a dragon and ride on, I assume, Caraxes back to King's Landing. Now, there is the possibility that maybe Damon didn't like take him himself, because that's also somewhat dangerous. Like, what if he's got a dagger on him and he tries to just like, okay, well, I'm gonna I'm gonna lose my own life, but I'm gonna take Damon out with me. So maybe he had him ride back with like Ulf. That's my headcanon as to why Damon didn't notice. Okay, this guy doesn't know what it's like to ride a dragon. Why is he so like freaked out? Why doesn't he know how to strap himself into the saddle? Maybe he rode back with Hugh or Ulf. Probably Ulf, because Ulf wouldn't notice that. Uh, so yeah, no, that feels like a thing. I think there are. I think in episode 1 of this show, I think that Rhaenyra suggests that her and Alicent could ride together, fly around on dragonback and do nothing but eat cake and explore the world. Um, but I off the top of my head, I can't think of any for sure, but I'm pretty sure that there have been other Targaryens who have had friends riding shotgun on the dragons. So yeah, I don't think that's lore breaking, but oh yeah. When Jaehaerys and Alysanne uh traveled the world, they flew around on their dragons and brought their sworn protectors with them. So yeah, presumably they were riding shotgun during all of that. So that makes sense. Um and no, fake Darren did not ride to Sarion, which yeah, it would have been a quick like way for, I mean, I don't think Damon suspected this at all. Like you could tell he definitely didn't. He's just like, yeah, this is like a formality. The war is over. We've got 3 huge dragons. They've got 1 little baby dragon. If they mess with me, I'm going to burn them all alive. He didn't expect any resistance, I don't think. Um so yeah, I think Damon's guard was just down at this point. Um Yes, Alyssa Farman. That was someone else I was thinking about. But I'm like, I don't remember if she actually rode on any of the dragons, but she was one where I'm like, yeah, I mean, she was besties with Targaryens, so I would imagine like she might have been one of them. She was one of the people I had in my head of like maybe she flew, but I don't recall either. Um, but yeah, that would make sense. Oh yeah. The that's another good example. The Prince Aaron, the little baby Aaron, when Aegon the Conqueror conquered the Vale, Visenya rocks up on her dragon, lands at the Eyrie, and the kid's like, "Well, all right, I won't be king of the Mountain and Vale anymore. I'll just be lord, but I want to ride on the dragon." And so she takes him for a nice little fly around on the dragon, and he's all happy, and he bends the knee. So yeah, people who are not Targaryen can ride shotgun on dragons. Um, So yeah, presumably he flies back with Ulf. I'm gonna say it was with Ulf, and then yeah, and yeah, Damon is like a little bit too proud to think that he could possibly be lied to in this way or tricked, right? He's just like, yeah, obviously staring down these three dragons, they're not gonna do anything funny. Yeah, that would be that would be oh yeah, and I mean if you're counting the late seasons of the show, Daenerys also does like rescue a bunch of people from a frozen lake. Which is yeah one of the plots that yeah we could talk a lot about that plot in the late seasons of the show, but yes, in that scenario as well. But yeah, so Ormond is telling the fake Darren to be brave, and yeah, it's a interesting scheme, you know. It's interesting that Ormond is like still putting up this resistance when it does seem clear that the war is lost, but I imagine we're going to find out more about what exactly his motivations are and what he's up to next episode. The next episode preview has had a lot of him in Tumbleton. So yeah, that'll be really interesting. I'm very much looking forward to episode 4. Um so then we see Rhaenyra, and from this point on, because that was a pre-theme song scene. I don't know how often we get those, but we got a pre-intro scene, and now after the intro music, it is entirely like Rhaenyra's point of view for the rest of the episode, which I thought was really cool. Because it really gives us like a extended look into what exactly she's dealing with now, all of the politics and the problems that are not solved by just, as I said, rocking into town on your dragon and sitting on the big pointy chair. Uh, so yeah, and the first one is she says that the air is thick with ghosts as she's looking at the bed that she is presumably expected to sleep in, but it's the bed where her father laid bedridden for the last like decade of his life, barely able to get out. Like she watched her father rot in this bed, and it will become a theme or a revisited point of discussion throughout the episode that she can't sleep in this bedroom, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you wouldn't want to sleep in a bed where you watched your father, slowly die for years and years. That's not many happy memories. Although she does say in this scene that not all of the ghosts are unhappy. She remembers coming into this room and playing a tune that she had learned for Viserys when she was young. So yeah, it's a lot of emotions coming back in, like, it like if you think about inheriting your parents' house when they die, it'd be weird to, go sleep in their bed shortly after they have passed. It'd be a weird position. So that is what Rhaenyra is having to deal with here. And she talks about um her coronation, and she's talking about how they need to organize tourneys and have a grand procession. And she basically wants to make it a big deal, a big feast with all of the lords invited and tourneys and a proper coronation. Unlike Aegon's, who they did it in haste and they just gathered all of the small folk into the dragon pit, and then a big dragon burst through the floor and almost ate everybody. But no, Rhaenyra wants a proper coronation. Um, and then they go and find little fake Daron, and he has been ordered not to speak because apparently, I mean, I would imagine the idea is that anything he says can only serve to more quickly give away that he is not really Darren. Which, yeah, Ormond did not buy himself that much time. Um, if they had instantly just brought Darren to where Alicent and Helena were, like they would have found out 2 days sooner before Tumbleton was taken. Because yeah, when later on in the episode, when they tell Alicent, when Rhaenyra goes and says, yeah, Alicent, we have your son here. She's like, how long have you had him? She's like, 2 days ago, he was brought here as part of the conditions of the High Tower surrender. So yeah, yeah. Um, I don't recall if I thought they might have, but yeah, this is something that I would have to, I guess, go back and check on. Maybe someone remembers in the chat when did they mention splitting the gold in season 2? I feel like it was like an offhanded mention in a small council scene, but I don't actually remember exactly what was said. Um, so yeah, we'll maybe someone in chat has that line or remembers it, but um then yeah, when they send away fake Daron because he won't talk, Rhaenyra says he's younger than I imagined, which is a little hint that, it's the fake Daron, but also this is a sign that she doesn't want to kill him. And Damon's like, "You're gonna have to kill him." She is like, "Oh dang, I didn't realize like this is a kid. This is a literal child that I'm gonna have to like lop the head off of. A child who I am brothers, or he's my brother. He's done nothing wrong. Like, dang, this is gonna be rough. He's younger than I thought, and I'm gonna have to chop his head off." Okay, yeah, some people in chat are confirming they did have a little conversation about the gold, and then it cuts right at the end of the conversation. Um, Potentially right after Viserys dies. So yeah, I had thought they had brought it up, but yeah, I didn't remember the exact conversation, but like when that happened, I was like in my brain, little monkeys started turning in the brain. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. They did something with the gold, didn't they? Um, but yes. So thank you to chat for confirming that. And yeah, this is the next scene that we get. Orwyle is explaining to them that, hey, you guys are broke. You got no gold anywhere. The Lannisters and Hightowers have hidden away all of the gold. And oh yeah, someone says the results of the poll are wild. We have currently got 57% saying that Aegon did better in his first days on the job than Rhaenyra did. Any of you who are joining, feel free to vote in that and make your opinions known, and we'll check on that as we keep going throughout the episode. Um, but well, a lot they're saying a lot of Team Green in chat. I don't think you necessarily need to be Team Green to think that Aegon's first days were handled better. Necessarily. And as I said at the beginning, for those of you who have joined later, Aegon's beginning days were far easier to handle than Rhaenyra's. He had like a million less problems and a bunch of gold. And yeah, as someone said, he realistically didn't make that many decisions, whereas Rhaenyra has got like endless problems presented before her. So it is an interesting conversation for sure. Um, but yeah, it is not an entirely like you don't have to say the person that you think should be on the throne did a better job in their first few days. Those aren't necessarily the same things. Um, so yeah. Um, but yeah, so then we sort of get Rhaenyra's first little new small council scene. Mysaria is her mistress of whispers, and she's got Daemon, Corlys, and Mysaria as essentially her advisors. Corlys even says in this scene something like, "Are you gonna send for your small council?" And Rhaenyra is like, "No, they betrayed me. I'm gonna make a new small council with Team Black and hookers." And that's what she does. She's got Corlys, Daemon, and Mysaria. Um, so yeah, she's got her new small council here, and yeah. This is a good comparison. It is basically like a Cersei, a Feast for Crows chapter where we get to watch a queen trying to rule in the throne room or in the Red Keep, and just constantly alienating potential allies and making some mistakes that will probably come back to bite her. Yeah, it definitely has the vibes of a Cersei chapter. Um, and so they talk about how like, hey, so the blockade is over, but we still don't have trade routes established. We got to get some food into the city, or the people are going to go hungry again. And Mysaria is like pushing that, like, hey, it's important to feed your people. And Daemon is like, why do we care? Like, why do the small folk constantly need food? It's so annoying. This is such a boring topic of conversation. The war is won. We should be doing fun things now. um so yeah, It's a funny little. Damon has some funny line about how like the small folk constantly needing food is just like annoying to him, basically. And Masari is like, no, actually, this is kind of life and death. This is like one of your most important jobs. Um, so yeah, it's an interesting little dynamic. And then we get the report that Aemond has taken Harrenhal and that he has killed Sir Simon and his sons. And Damon is very sad about this, which I thought was good. Like, it shows that Damon has actually, we knew he grew as a person during his time in Harrenhal, but he has grown as a person and he has grown to like Sir Simon Strong and Alice Rivers and all of them. Um, and he walks around the table sadly, and it said it is days now since Vagar was last seen, which I find really interesting, because Vagar is gigantic, and they're scouting for Vagar. Where did Vagar go? It feels like it feels like it is difficult to hide Vagar inside of Harrenhal, and I don't know if this is true. This is not a spoiler, really. What I heard someone say that Aemond allegedly is not in the next episode either. I don't know if that's true. So like I am just relaying a thing that I heard mentioned. Um, with no confirmation. But if Aemond is not in the next episode either, because in the next episode preview we see that like Kristen Cole and them arrive at Harrenhal. So if Aemond is like legitimately gone, that is interesting. Um, like I'm curious where he went, and there is one answer that is the most exciting. For nerds who like the old godsy magic, which would be that Vagar and Aemond were stowed away by Alice Rivers on the Isle of Faces somewhere, which would be something that would be wild, if that ends up happening. I'm not necessarily predicting that, but I am pointing out that that is one of the places that you can maybe potentially stash a giant dragon. Um, and yeah, well, that's the thing. So Alice Rivers is in the trailer. And that's why I found it so interesting that someone reportedly claimed that Aemond is not in the next episode. Because if Aemond is not in the next episode, that probably means he's not actually still in Harrenhal. Um, so yeah, it could definitely be some witchy magic. Maybe Vagar has been glamored as a goat. Who knows? Maybe she has turned Vagar into a goat, like she potentially turns herself or the Green Man, who we see sometimes, into a goat. Like that is another thing that I like. If someone is glamoring themselves as that goat, or transforming into it somehow, is it Alice or is it the Green Man that we see? Because the Green Man has hooves, so the glamour only changes the seeming, right? So if he still makes the hoof sound when he walks, maybe it's the Green Man who's been the goat the entire time. But yeah, maybe Vagar is glamored as a little dragonfly or something else, something random. But yeah, I'm really curious about this line, and what they're gonna end up doing with Vagar next episode. Um, and Damon asks about Alice Rivers. He's sad about Simon Strong, and he's worried about Alice Rivers, which again just shows that Damon actually has grown to care for these people a little bit, even Alice, who he denied Harrenhal last episode. Um, but interestingly enough, so Rhaenyra says that she wants to give a bounty to anyone who brings Aemond dead or who kills Aemond. And Damon is like, well, it would seem that we don't have a bounty because the whole treasury is empty. And she says, we will find one. And she says, to the slayer of Aemond One Eye, I will grant Harrenhal itself. Which has to be interesting for Damon to hear, because at the end of, or at, near, like, last episode, at the end of his time in Harrenhal, um, Alice asked for Harrenhal, and he's just like, we can't just go give that out to anyone. But then Rhaenyra is just like, I will give Harrenhal to anyone as long as they kill Aemond. So like, oh damn, turns out Damon, you could have like offered Alice this deal, and she would have been in an actual position to, you know, do it, because he crawls to her for help healing. Like, like, yeah, it would have been literally perfect. Like, she literally is just like, yeah, I'm just gonna give Harrenhal to whoever kills Aemond, and Damon is like, no, we can't give you Harrenhal. I think that's a very funny little situation because yeah, now Damon he can't go back to Harrenhal and be like, hey Alice, I I guess I was wrong. Turns out you can have Harrenhal. Like there's no Weirwood phone that he can use. Helena could maybe send a message to Alice somehow through the Weirwood net, but Damon does not seem to have unlocked that power. So it is kind of a funny little, not a misunderstanding, but a funny little situation that they have built here where like, oh damn, if only he could communicate with Alice, their problem would like be over. He could apologize and be like, "Yep, I will give you the castle. All you need to do is kill this dude." But alas, it seems it will not be that easy. And also interesting, and yeah, someone just brought up in chat as well. Yeah, Harrenhal was technically offered to the Freys so that they could cross the bridge, that the Northmen could cross the bridge. So it's an interesting situation, right? It Another case of George R. R. Martin's history rhyming. A young prince during a war rocks up to the twins, negotiates a deal for the crossing of the Northern Army across the twins, and then there is just no intent to actually follow that in the end. So yeah, the phrase we'll see what they do in response, but it does appear that the phrase are not going to be given Harrenhal as they promised they would be given. So yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, I suppose he could, right? Um, but he doesn't necessarily know where Aemond is. He doesn't necessarily know that Aemond is in the charge of Alice to be healed. So it's an interesting situation because like if he had full information, if he knew what we knew, it would be a very interesting, like it'd be a very easy conversation. He could uh he could just be like, hey, just slip a little poison in the next weirwood paste that you feed Aemond, and Harrenhal is yours. But uh, yeah, we don't know. And yeah, I don't know if Alice tends to the Ravens, but she might. She might. And yeah, this is also kind of an interesting thing that I've noticed. A bunch of people have like called Alice a maester of sorts, um, which like I understand that coming from Damon because she is basically the maester of Harrenhal, and she tells him that the previous one fled in the night. The one that I thought was kind of weird was when Hugh Hammer saw Alice, and he's just like, "Yeah, I thought maybe she was some sort of maester, but then she said she was a witch." And that is like, why did Hugh think she was a maester? When he just sees a random woman in the woods, why did he think, oh, this must be some sort of maester? But but yeah, they have compared Alice to a maester a few times, a maester of sorts, as Damon says. Um, and yeah, like it would be very Damon for him to just show back up and be like, hey, I talked to the queen and I negotiated on your behalf. You can have Harrenhal. You just got to kill Aemond. But again, there's just no way really for him to communicate that necessarily. Like, there's no way that there's no way. Like, had he said like, "Hey, I'll see what I can do. Send word to me," like, you know, and keep me informed on the situation in the castle, and I'll see what I can do about giving you Harrenhal. As soon as Rhaenyra says this, he could have gone and written her a letter or flown back on his dragon and been like, "Hey, best news, we found a way to give you Harrenhal." But he just completely shut her down, and so because he shut her down and because she was angry about it, it it looks like they're not going to be able to capitalize. Which is, an interesting, as I said, an interesting dynamic that the show set up. So yeah, then we see Rhaenyra walking through the hallway, and just everyone in the castle has got a problem, which is now Rhaenyra's to solve. The candle guy doesn't have enough candles because the rats are eating it. They have no rat catchers because Aegon hanged them all. The wine guy or wine lady uh, can't afford wine because the treasury is gone, and the price of wine, which comes from the Reach and the High Towers, is now tripled in price or whatever. So yeah, It's a bunch of people got a bunch of problems, and Rhaenyra doesn't have any answers to any of it right now. And we're checking back on the poll. We've currently got 59% saying Aegon did better in his first days on the job. So again, if you're rolling in here late, feel free to make your opinion known as to who had the better first few days. And so yeah, then Rhaenyra goes to question Alicent about where all the gold is gone, and Alicent is like, "They never told me anything. I don't understand why you think I would know anything. They kept all their plans secret from me." And Rhaenyra is like, "You really expect me to believe that?" She's just like, "I would have you ask my father, but you cut his head off." Like, Rhaenyra, that's the other thing that happened in the previous scene. The only other people in the castle who may have known where Tyland hid the gold would have been Otto and Jasper Wilde. And those two got their heads chopped off by Daemon and Rhaenyra, and Tyland is thrown overboard by a pirate and presumed dead. So, yeah, it may be the case that no one knows where the gold is actually being held. Like, could you imagine if they just like buried it somewhere and now it's just gone? We assume that they sent it back to like, you know, Casterly Rock and Old Town, and that maybe part of that might be why Ormond is so confident in continuing to fight, because maybe he knows that the entire crown's treasury is like back in his bedroom, you know. So he's just like, hey, if we can take Tumbleton, they're gonna run out of money in like a week or two. I'm not gonna like maybe he was, constantly feeding gold into Otto or I guess it wouldn't have been Otto for a while because Otto was captured for a while, but if the plan was for him to just send like the royal treasury back to keep upkeep going, like, send a month's worth of gold at a time every month, he would know then that like, hey, we just have to wait them out. They're going to run out of money. People are going to starve. So maybe that's part of why Ormond is like so willing to continue fighting. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and Alicent is just like, look, I don't have any idea where the gold is. I can't predict the schemes of Larys Strong when Aegon disappeared. Nobody told me anything. Don't blame me for this. This is not my fault. And then Helena, when it is brought up that Rhaenyra chopped off Otto's head, is just like, did it make you feel better? Which is a very interesting question from Helena to Rhaenyra, because Rhaenyra chopped off the head of someone who is like related to the fact that her son was killed. Otto did not directly kill her son, although Otto is, I would argue, the most responsible for this war starting in the first place. But it's an interesting question from Helena because, like, Rhaenyra is tangentially related to the death of Helena's son. So, like, Rhaenyra chops off the head of someone who is tangentially related to her son's death, and Helena is looking at Rhaenyra and being like, do you feel better after you get revenge? And like part of it is potentially like there's a couple ways to read it. One is her sort of shaming Rhaenyra, being like, "This obviously didn't make you feel better, did it? So why did you have to kill my grandfather?" The other part of it is Helena could be being like, "Does revenge actually feel good? Like, should I be trying to kill you? Would I feel better if I like killed you?" Uh, which is a very funny like way to read this as well. Is Helena is like first like for the first time she's considering like, oh, I wonder if revenge would make me feel better. And it's like a genuine question to the person who she may want to get revenge on. That would, I think, be kind of funny. um but yeah, uh and I mean, yeah, Damon and Ulf and Hugh should just fly to Old Town, take the gold, and burn the castle. I mean, they might try that at some point if they find out where the gold is. I think Rhaenyra's goal at this point is to not just be burning everyone. She wants like a peaceful rise to power, and if she can subdue the rebellion with just the threat of dragons rather than actually burning everyone alive, that seems to be her goal. Um, and so, yeah, I would imagine she's going to want to not at least have that be the first choice of action to just burn all of the potential castles where they could have stashed the gold. But, you know, if things get desperate enough, that may definitely be on the table at some point. Um, and yeah, like I like this reading of Helena's question here as like a genuine attempt to resolve her own emotions over the death of her son, is to be like, oh, does revenge help? Like, does it help, or should I find another way to grieve the loss of my own child? Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, and I imagine her and Rhaenyra have had conversations off screen. It's not like Darren, where she starts the conversation being like, "We've never met." But yeah, it is interesting that this is the first time we see the two of them actually talk on screen. But she's just like, "Yeah, does revenge make you happy? Caterpillars make me happy as long as they're in the right season." That is pretty much. Yeah, Helena's just like making small chat, like trying to get to know her big sister. That is another funny way to read this. Um, Oh yeah, did they send some of their gold to the Iron Bank? That would make sense actually. I do, as I said, I don't remember exactly the wording of that conversation. It was just one of those things that I'm like, "Oh yeah, they did move the gold, didn't they?" Um but yeah, if they sent it to the Iron Bank, now that you mention that, that does sound familiar. Then it would be harder to just burn and take, which would make it a good place to store their gold. Um, and yes, the part of the plan currently to deal with the treasury being gone is to send Damon to the Vale to go get a bunch of gold. So, yeah, it's gonna be an interesting situation when he arrives in the Vale, and yeah, I assume he will find Reyna and Sheepstealer are there, on his trip to the Vale. That seems to be what they're setting up. So I cannot wait to to see that. Um, and well, I mean, this is kind of how you do setup, though, right? Like, you want little subtle throwaway lines that people are like, "Oh yeah, I forgot that that happened," but then it's actually like really important. Like that's what George does all the time. That's how George does his setups, where you're like, "Oh dang, I guess they did do that, didn't they?" And then you reread the book and you realize, like, "Oh yeah, actually, like this was here the whole time." Uh, that's a thing. Oh yeah, was that Laris that sent his? I think that might be what I was remembering. Yes, I think Laris did send his gold to the Iron Bank, which is why Harrenhal was broke. I don't remember for sure. I do think that's what I was thinking of. I don't recall exactly what the wording was, between like Otto and Thailand and Jasper to what they were doing with the Crown's treasury. Um, and okay, in the books is apparently a quarter to the Iron Bank, a quarter to Old Town, quarter to Casterly Rock, and the other quarter on alcohol and sell swords. That just seems like good budgeting to me. I think that seems like a fair assessment of the situation. So yeah, no, that seems like a pretty good plan. Um, but yeah, so then after Helena asks if revenge makes you feel better, Rhaenyra just drops, "I would have rather slayed Aegon as your mother and I had agreed." And Helena's like, "Well, my mom did what now? What? What did mom do? Can't do that, mom. That's kind of messed up." But yeah, Helena gives her mother a look of like, you said what about my brother husband now?" Um, but yeah, yeah. And yeah, like I think there is some thought of this in Helena. Like she has a big dragon. She like if it would genuinely make her feel better, and she may be considering like, oh, like I guess, yeah, a father for a father. Like she might be genuinely wondering, like, damn, do I get on my dragon and try get revenge? I don't want to, but maybe it would heal this giant hole in my heart for my son who died recently. It is an interesting situation. Um, and so yeah, Rhaenyra continues to question Alicent, and she says, "Who rides Sheepstealer?" And Alicent has to be like, "I don't know," which Rhaenyra probably doesn't fully believe. Like, it doesn't make sense that Sheepstealer, because they fully believe Sheepstealer is being ridden by someone on Team Green. So it doesn't make sense that they would have gained a dragon and Alicent would have no idea who the rider is. Like makes sense that Rhaenyra would think Alicent is lying here. So that's another interesting dynamic with this whole situation. They have to figure out who's riding Sheep Stealer, and it turns out it's someone on their team. She's just so bad at controlling the dragon that they're convinced it's someone on the other team. So yeah, it's an interesting situation. And then we get another interesting line when they're talking about Aegon. Alicent says that his dragon is dead, declare him dead as well. And that's interesting. We get it's only one of two mentions that we get that Sunfire is dead in this episode. Um, which it would be very interesting if that were the case. Um, we fully don't know if they're going to go the same way as the books or not. In the books, like I will say, Sunfire did not die at Rook's Rest, was horribly wounded, and I won't go into any further detail than that. But like it would be an interesting change from the books, which is why I think so many people are so intrigued by these lines about Sunfire being dead. So yeah, maybe it is the case. Like I genuinely do not know. I don't think anyone knows for sure. So it's not really a spoiler to say so, but yeah, it is intriguing that Sunfire is apparently dead. I assume we'll find out next episode because it appears like Aegon should be arriving there soon enough. Um, so yeah, we'll have to see. But the plan is to declare Aegon dead because there's no, there's no pictures, there's no Facebook. No one's gonna know if Aegon is really Aegon or not, if he is in hiding for a year and he comes back and he's like, I'm the king, really, I am. Rhaenyra can just be like, no, you're not. You're some random dude who got burned beyond recognition. Get out of here. And then she can kill him quietly or just dismiss him, as Alicent says. Um, so yeah, it's an interesting situation. Thank you for the super chat, West of Westeros. Do you think we will see Cannibal or the Children of the Forest? Do you think we'll see young Melisandre? And do you think we'll see the Helena outcome? I imagine that Helena will have roughly the same story as in the books without spoilery situations. I imagine Helena will end up at the end of the dance in the same place that she ends up in the source material. To answer that, uh, I don't think we'll see young Melisandre. I imagine she was still in the East this whole time. She is old enough. She is 400 years old, apparently. So she would be around. She's in the world somewhere at this time, but I don't think she's Alice Rivers or anything like that. I've seen that theory. Um, the Children of the Forest, I think, like that is definitely possible. We've seen Green Men. Uh, if we're seeing Green Men, we could definitely see Children of the Forest. And if Alice Rivers is not all that she seems, I think it's far more likely that she's a child of the forest than that she's young Melisandre. This is something I talked about last episode, um, because like my last live stream covering last episode, and just to be quick about it, basically, I think it makes complete sense that the children of the forest could use glamours to pretend to be people. It seems to be the only implication that you can really take from what Leaf says when Bran and company first meet her in the cave. She says that she walked the world of men for 200 years to watch and listen and learn, all for the sake of Bran, and that's how she learned the common tongue. And she has someone in the cave with her directly in Bloodraven who uses a glamour. So if we're gonna see Children of the Forest, I would imagine it'll either be with Alice or potentially Alice unglamoring and revealing herself to be one. That is very possible. Um, so yeah, I'm not saying it'll for sure happen, but I would be more likely to assume we will see Children of the Forest than young Melisandre. Cannibal is an interesting one. I don't know if we're gonna see Cannibal just because of the budget of adding a dragon. Like Cannibal and Grey Ghost maybe will remain off-screen dragons. I hope we see Cannibal. And there may be some other, like we could get scenes on Dragonstone in the future, without going into spoiler anything. Like maybe, like I genuinely don't know. Maybe there will be a cannibal sighting, but if you were gonna force me to bet, like if I have to bet $5 one way or the other, I'd bet we wouldn't see Cannibal. But I wouldn't be confident in that, but I would say that's just most likely because if they don't have to spend the money to animate a whole nother dragon, I think they will, probably avoid that. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Um, but yeah, since they changed this much from the books, you're questioning. I assume that's questioning whether or not we're gonna see young Melisandre or other changes that you ask about. And yeah, I mean, I don't think they're gonna go as far as to show us young Melisandre. Um, but yes, thank you for all the support. I yeah, I am glad that you have stumbled on in. And if anyone else is here for the first time, there's plenty of good A Song of Ice and Fire content for you to watch after this stream. So welcome and glad that you're here. Um and if yes, so yes, some spoilers. I won't say anything, but I do agree it would be cool if that happened, if Sunfire is actually dead, maybe Aegon could claim Cannibal, he's saying, but I don't think that will happen, because it seems pretty well established in the lore that you can't have more than one dragon bonded to you in a lifetime because Viserys, he bonded with a dragon, his dragon died, and then he just went the entire rest of his life without a dragon bond. So I do think I'm picking up what you're putting down there, Fire Flame Fine, but I don't think that they will go that direction. But I am we're on the same page with what you're asking. I'm just not going further into it for the what you said at the end of the comment, the spoilers. Um, uh, so, uh, so are you asking about the Corlys moment? It says so. You said what want you? I'm guessing what were your thoughts on the your Strongs were bastard moments? I'm assuming you're talking about Corlys. If not, definitely feel free to clarify. But the Corlys moment we will definitely talk about, and I think it's a really I loved the moment. In the show, he even had the same look on his face briefly that Vayman got, like they kind of scrunched up their face and then screamed, "They were bastards." Um, so yes, it's an interesting it's an interesting um situation that they're setting up because it's just such a bad political play from Rhaenyra, in my opinion. Like it's uh it's just so it'd be so easy for her to just legitimize Corlys's children. And it's kind of partially what Damon said, like, dang, Rhaenyra, you've come so far, and yet you don't recognize how powerful you are, is basically the point of his conversation that they have later on. And it's true. Like, Rhaenyra, you have 6 dragons right now. No one is going to be coming to question Joffrey's legitimacy. If you take the throne, the world is what you make it. I mean, Alicent even later on says that Viserys lived in a world of his own creation, and Rhaenyra, in theory, if she can win the throne and defeat the opposition, she has the power to make a world of her own creation as well. So, like, she has no real reason to worry about the legitimacy question, right? Like legitimizing Corlys's children so that he can have an heir would not have affected her in the way that I think she thinks it would. So yeah, it just seems like a massive mistake on her part. That's where I would say. Um, and I imagine it's going to lead to a rift between her and Corlys. That seems to be like what most of this episode is doing, right? She's making bad political plays that she feels are necessary that are going to create rifts between her and other people. Like there's a lot of issues that are created during this entire episode. And yeah, without going into spoilers or anything like that, it is a situation of like, yeah, these are things that can absolutely come back to haunt Rhaenyra. If she alienates the people around her, her small council, just all of the, she fed rats to all of the nobles in King's Landing and the Crown Lands. Like, these are alienating moves that are part of the reason that I think Aegon is still winning in the poll. Yes, he is. Still say 58% of you say that Aegon did better in his first few days, and it's largely because of things like that, I think. Um, so yeah, it's an interesting situation. Um, Kirsty says the children of the forest are referenced as squirrels, or children of the forest referenced as squirrels were at the Citadel. Dustin referenced two maesters as gray rats, who with squirrels are rodents. Children of the forest never left the Citadel. Alice is a children of the forest slash maester. Yeah, I mean that is interesting. Yeah, actually, if Allison, or if Alice rather, is a child of the forest and everyone is acting like she's a maester, and then they're the gray rats, and the children of the forest are called squirrel people. I think that is that like the giant's name for them is squirrel people. Um, so yeah, it's a very it's an interesting little connection chain that you've done here. Yeah. But yeah, like it. So the way that I think that the children of the forest spy on the Citadel personally is warging through ravens, which is another thing we've talked about here. But like, yeah, the children of the forest can absolutely spy on humanity in their letters with ravens and things like that. So like, I think like that's a thing that you have to keep an eye on when in the books a raven arrives at a very specific time or doesn't arrive at all, or when people send letters via ravens, and then we find out when we get to the cave with the children of the forest that like all of these birds have dead children of the forest souls living in them, and that's like part of the child of the forest afterlife, is to go into the trees and into birds in this big hive mind that seems to be able to, you know inhabit all of these different animals. Yeah, I think there is absolutely a child of the forest connection at the Citadel. Um, Mostly, in my opinion, through the ravens, but yeah, that is definitely a thing. And yes, so many pluses in the chat for the people who have read all the books. I'm still not gonna go like into full spoilers or anything because I do know a good chunk of the audience has not read all of the material, but yeah, I know that a lot of you have, but I do want to keep like not I don't want to directly reference spoilers in these because a lot of people are, watching this without any idea of what's going on, and I think that is a good way, like that's a fun way to watch things. So, yeah. I also was asked last episode about putting chat directly on the screen. And the part of my thoughts about that are also like chat oftentimes does talk directly about spoilers, and things like that. So at least I assume, because like when I watch an old YouTube live stream back, you have the option to have the live chat as it existed up on the side or to not have that. So I feel like at least for shows like where we're covering a show where the source material is known, putting the chat on screen might spoil people in a way that having it off optionally for people watching back later would not. So that is part of my thoughts as well about whether I put chat like physically on the screen for you to see or not, since some people asked about that last episode. So we'll see. I'll consider it maybe, but because yeah, it is obviously cool for people in the chat to see their chats on the live stream. I do understand that aspect of it as well. But also, as I said, it is still there. It is in the live chat, which is visible on YouTube, that people have the option to have on or off. So, but yeah, so thank you for that little burst of super chats. But yes, there is. You are at home here. You are welcome here, west of Westeros. And yeah, if you're just new to the channel, as I said, lots of cool stuff for you to check out after this. Um, so yeah, it is good. Thank you again. Thank you all for the little burst of super chats here. The support really does help. But so yeah, Rhaenyra, when Alicent says, "Hey, just declare Aegon dead, like, we don't even have to worry about this," um, and Rhaenyra thinks, like, "You're still arguing to save his life," and Alicent's just like, "Look, you killed my father, don't you have enough heads at this point?" Um, and that is somewhat fair, but also, like, Alicent, I don't really know what you expected. I don't see a world in which Otto Hightower got out of this with his head. And I think that's why Alicent isn't just like more furious about this, because she does probably recognize that if anyone was directly responsible for all this, it was her father. So she is pissed that she walked in to find his headless corpse in front of the Iron Throne. Um, you know, she she is as pissed as you would be knowing that your father has been killed, but also like she pretty much has to know that it was going to happen at some point. Um, yeah, Otto's head would have had to roll regardless. So yeah, it's an interesting reaction, interesting situation Alicent is in, having to be like as devastated as you would be at the loss of a parent, but also like she probably knew it was coming on some level. So yeah. And thank you. Yeah. I do think that of my theories, the stuff I'm most confident in at this point is probably the White Walker and the Wall stuff, like the White Walkers as Shadow Baby, Green Seer Shadow Babies, um, and the Wall being Weirwood magic essentially. Um, so yeah, it is great that you enjoy it. I yeah. It's awesome that so many people have enjoyed my theories, and now I can just talk about shows like this with over 160 of you hanging out here. So yeah, it is great. And again, thank you all very much for the support. Yeah, it is awesome. And yes, this is what Alicent is saying here for sure. She's saying like, look, you've had your fall guy. Aegon can be declared dead and not actually die. Um, and th- fair enough, right? Like, yeah, Rhaenyra is correct that she is maybe arguing for Aegon's life a little bit, but it is a fair point that she raises. Um, so yeah. And yeah, thank you very much. For liking the theories and all of that stuff. But so then after this conversation, Rhaenyra goes out and she's walking through the halls and she freezes because they're talking about killing Darren, and she's making the case that like, well, he's innocent, he's my brother, he did nothing wrong, and then she sees Jace walking towards her, and it's like I don't know. I've seen people bring up the idea of like madness or magic or some sort of vision of this, but I think that what this is trying to convey is like that moment when you've lost someone and then all of the sudden uh you see someone who looks a lot like them. Like I've had this happen like shortly after my grandpa died. Like I would be out at the store and you see like someone who just looks enough just like him where you're like, oh, you do like a double take, right? Because that person is, heavy on your mind at that point, and then you see someone who looks enough like them that for a split second your brain auto completes and you think it's them, just because your brain is messing with you. And I think that's what's going on here. I don't think it's any Targaryen madness. I don't think it's any like um it's any magic or weirwood shenanigans. I think this is just part of the grieving process. And yeah, some people in chat are agreeing that they have had a similar thing happen, and I think that that is what the show is trying to convey. I imagine that's a fairly common uh common reaction essentially. Um, and yeah, thank you for joining as a member. That is a good way to support the channel. So huge thank you for that. So I have not done the Crusader Kings 3 A Song of Ice and Fire mod with the dragons yet. I've played Crusader Kings 2. I could maybe do a video or at least bring it up at some point in the future. I don't know how many people would watch that video, last season of House of the Dragon, season 2, I played a bunch of Crusader Kings 2 uh as like a dragon lord. Like there's one dude who survives the doom of Valyria and still has a dragon and a big army, and with him I went and I conquered Westeros and essentially played for like a couple hundred years. um and now in the world of that game there's like 50 dragons and they're all over the damn place, and I've lost control of like a bunch of them. They're in just like other realms being ridden by my relatives who are the queen of like Bravos or something crazy. It's a pretty crazy game that I have not played in like 2 years, but I did binge Crusader Kings 2, A Song of Ice and Fire mod during season 2 of House of the Dragon. And just in the last few weeks, like, I also, for the first time, really played a save of Crusader Kings 3, and it was in the After the End mod, which, for those of you who don't know, is a like post-apocalyptic America mod where like the world has progressed back to medieval levels, um, which I was going to bring up uh, later on when Damon is doing his whole speech of like, "Hey, we took King's Landing. It's time to go conquer the entire world now." I'm like, "Oh, he's just like me in Crusader Kings 3 for real." Like, I was sitting there, I'm like, "I'm gonna just build my small little empire. I don't want to play tall. I want to play tall. I don't want to like spread out everywhere. I'm just gonna like make my little. I'm gonna conquer enough to be safe, and then make a big old area, or like build up my area, right? And then as soon as I start playing, I'm just like, no, I got to conquer that duchy. They're weak over there. I can go take that now. And I've already grown beyond what I anticipated. But yeah, so we'll talk about that more in the Damon scene, perhaps. But yeah, um, I don't know how interested I would be in a stream of Crusader Kings, just because I feel like it's a hard one to stream, and actually focus on the chat as well as playing the game. You know, it's one of those where it kind of takes your full attention, but maybe, maybe after House of the Dragon is done, we could do a Crusader Kings. I considered doing it after Dunk and Egg, because there's a start date right after the Ashford tourney. So I just didn't actually know how to play Crusader Kings 3 at that point. Now that I've learned it a little bit, maybe at some point in the future we'll have to do that. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining. It is awesome to see people joining up. And yeah, thank you for anyone who is joining the streams for the first time. It is good to have new people rolling in. But yeah, so as we see, yes, it is, people in chat are agreeing that yeah, it is relatable to see like a familiar face in this person who looks just enough like Jace, to make her do a double take and have a little freak out. And yeah, that is just the unprocessed grief that she is still feeling. And she was arguing before she has this little episode of like, no, I should spare Darren. He's innocent. He's my brother. He did nothing wrong. And then as soon as she thinks she saw Jace and she has this sort of like PTSD moment, she's just like, why shouldn't I kill him? Like, yeah, they should lose a son the same way I did, basically. So yeah, this moment of grief, like we can directly see the grief affecting her and making her more ruthless and changing the way that she's handling these situations. Yes, the Mountain Blade, A Song of Ice and Fire mod is also great. That and Crusader Kings are some phenomenal Game of Thrones games. Um And then Rhaenyra goes and meets with the High Septon, who gives her a blessing in the name of the Seven who are one, but refuses to anoint her because he has just recently anointed Aegon, and he doesn't necessarily seem to believe her that Aegon is dead. He says, we haven't seen his remains, the Silent Sisters were not called to tend to them, basically saying it without saying it that I think you're lying, Rhaenyra. And Rhaenyra pulls a pretty good argument where she's just like, look, I am on the throne. I have taken the city. I have all of the dragons besides Vagar, basically. How has all of this happened if the gods did not will it? Like, that is a pretty good trump card you can pull when you are arguing with someone who is the head of a faith. Like, um, like, hey, why is this happening if it's not God's will? Like, what do you think is going on here? The gods presented me with a dragon so that I could take King's Landing. And this guy says, my gods do not deal in dragons. He says they're a profane magic created out of lust for power and darkness and impunity. And it's an interesting line because, like, the show is giving us little hints at the mystery of like exactly how the dragons were created. The tapestry scene in the beginning seems to imply that like there is human sacrifice and blood magic that went to creating the dragons. There's like the one scene in the tapestry is someone being stabbed in the back, there's blood dripping from the knife, and like that person's head is like turning into smoke and forming the head of the dragon. And the wings are like being formed out of fire. So it does sort of imply that basically like the dragons were created with blood magic in a quest for Valyrian power. So like dude is not wrong when he says this. But then he says no good can come of them and that they can only destroy, they cannot create. Which feels like a very dangerous thing to say to the dragon queen who could very easily kill you. And Rhaenyra is just like, you've made your position exceedingly clear, and starts to walk away, which he seems to take as like, dang, it it seems like she might be about to kill me. Like that seems to be a reasonable reading of the situation. So he warns her, do not make an enemy of the faith. Um oh well thank you very much, West of Westeros, for the chat. Um Ask a question or a thought. He seems to be opening that up to all of you. And yes, I will try to do my best to answer the questions here. Um, so yeah, the Septon was violating the law of Targaryen exceptionalism. Yeah. I mean, Daemon would have just had his head off then and there, which is another interesting conversation. Um, Essentially, like, what would Daemon have done? Because like we'll get to that when he's talking about how like, okay, we've taken King's Landing, let's conquer the entire world. If Daemon were king and not Rhaenyra being queen, like if Daemon had the final say, this might be the beginning of the attempt to form the new Valyrian Empire, which would be really interesting. Like it it maybe could have worked if they were like, okay, we're gonna take Dorne and we're gonna give that to Hugh Hammer, and we're gonna take Pentos and give that to Ulf. Like, form your own dynasties. We're gonna assign you dragon keepers, and we're gonna try to create families and families of dragon lords, all descended from Targaryens and Targaryen cadet branches. Like, they could potentially be in a position to, you know, go and take a lot of territory. But Rhaenyra does not seem to share that vision, as we'll see later on. And yeah, good point. Where do dragon eggs come from if dragons cannot create? But yeah, no, dragons do actually procreate. It seems that their gender, that their sex is interchangeable. That's at least what we're told. So they can be whatever they need to be, but it yes, they can, at least in that aspect, create. They can create new life. So yeah. Ooh, I have no idea. Like this is one of the questions that I have the most is like, because we basically have a 6 episode season 3, right? Um, because the last 2 episodes were the finale of season 2. I don't know. In a non-spoilery way, maybe before the God's Eye, like they could be setting up preparing us to go to the God's Eye as a cliffhanger potentially. I don't know though. I don't know exactly where they're going to end this season. I think that is one of the more interesting questions that I just really have no idea on. Um, and yeah, no, Viserys absolutely could have written a will that was like much more directly clear about. I mean, he feels like himself. He feels like he made it exceedingly clear what he wanted. He had no idea that it was not as clear as it was because he was very certain that that Rhaenyra was named his heir. He like took the throne that one final time to affirm that. But yeah, it would have maybe been a good idea to have like another public proclamation when he knew he was near the end to be like, hey, reminder everyone, all of the lords, all of the people, like reminder, this is who my heir is. But he did not do that. Um, yes, she was definitely hinting at him that like she's planning on getting rid of him one way or the other, and he's just like, I warn you, do not make an enemy of the faith. You know, that is to your peril. He said something like underestimated at your own peril. Um, so yeah. And yes, the faith is far more supported by the high towers. Like they are not an unbiased party in this. If you remember in season end of season 1, Damon comes back and he's just like calling out Allison being like, "Hey, why have you taken down all of our cool dragon art and tapestries and window, you know, frames? Why have they all been replaced by seven-pointed stars?" And Alicent is just like, our faith is a reminder to rule justly, or something like that. But yeah, the faith is absolutely more on the side of the high towers, for sure. Um, and yeah, no, this is fair. Valyria being reborn as another massive empire would not necessarily be a good thing for the world, but it is seemingly what Daemon was thinking and what Daemon would do if he were the one with the final say in this whole situation. Um, so yeah. Um, let's see. So I was thinking about this in the wake of this episode, doing a video, and I might do it later on in the season, especially as we see more of this, because like yeah, what really made me think about this was the conversation that they have later on, where they make it clear like, oh, Damon would be like trying to conquer the entire world. That is a very interesting situation. Um, but there are things in this episode that I don't think Damon. There are mistakes in this episode I don't think Damon would have made. I don't think he would do the rat feast for all of the nobles. I think he would have been fine with legitimizing Corlys's children because he's sitting there being like, "We have six dragons. No one can challenge us." He wouldn't be as worried about the bad look in the way that Rhaenyra is. So like there are definitely certain things about this particular episode that I think Damon would have done better on, just because he's just got that fuck it, I don't care attitude. I have dragons, you don't. The world is what I make it. And he says that to Rhaenyra basically. He's like, hey, like, you don't understand how powerful you are. You've come so far, but you don't know you have six dragons. Aegon only had three. Like, you have a power that is beyond comprehension. Um, so yeah, I might do a video on this in the future. I don't know for sure, but it is something that I've definitely been thinking about. Um, so yeah, I mean that would be a pretty dope situation, a Magor show. I mean, potentially after the Aegon the Conqueror movies or something, maybe we could get a show covering his successor. Um, I don't know if they'll do it, but it would. I mean, I'm sure they could make it pretty interesting. Um, it'd be a lot of really brutal stuff, but I feel like they could find ways to make that interesting depending on like which characters they follow and stuff like that. Um, this is a fair point. Damon got bored in the Stepstones. The only reason he's talking about conquering the world is because he's bored of ruling, and that as king he would just get bored, and that is very fair. Daemon would be halfway to ET if he was king. Yeah, the world at large is probably glad that Daemon was not made king. But okay, I am doing my. Oh, we got one more super chat here. I'll say what do we got here? If you got to say in a Germ story, I'd love to see what's east of Essos. Hence, Arya going west of Westeros. I want to see the mythic creatures from the books. Yes, like it would be awesome to see the Far East. Like what they talk about later on in the episode, the city of winged men and all of that sort of stuff. It would be awesome if we could, like, part of me wishes that Daemon was king just so that he and Rhaenyra would go there and we could see what is actually going on at the Five Forts in the city of winged men and in a shy and things like that. Um, but yeah, I like that would be an awesome thing to see. I would say that is absolutely high on my list as well. Um, and yeah, Daemon as king and Oscar Tully as hand. That would be a good pair. I think that that would actually probably work decently well. Simon Strong, had he not been killed, would also make a pretty decent hand, I think. Or well, would he stand up to Daemon enough? Oscar Tully has shown that he can stand up to Daemon, which is a big deal for being able to do that. So yeah, maybe Oscar would be better. But maybe Simon would be a little bit too willing to do whatever Daemon wanted, I guess. But okay. So, I am trying to pay attention to chat, but I am also gonna keep working our way through these slides. Otherwise, this will be a 5-hour stream because I have a lot of slides because a lot happened this episode. But Corley says that Alan and Adam are his sons, and Rhaenyra is just like, oh, I didn't think of that, but now that you mention it, yeah, I can see that that is definitely the case. And he says, and so I've acknowledged them, and I would name Alan my heir. And he asks Rhaenyra to legitimize the children. And she is like, oh, yeah, ooh, I don't know about that. But she must have, like, reluctantly agreed or, like, implied that she agreed. Um, because this dinner would be very awkward if not. And later on in the episode, Corlys seems to think that they had an understanding. So I don't know exactly what she said after this scene cuts, but it is it is a very interesting situation. And again, as I mentioned a little bit earlier on, a huge mistake in my opinion from Rhaenyra. Um, like you can just legitimize these kids. It won't actually affect you that much. I see on some level why she is worried about it, but it wouldn't be a worry that I think would actually have any material consequence. I think she could have easily just gotten over it and it would have been fine. Um so yeah. We then see her uh head out of the dinner and she sees Bela and they have like a little stare down where they don't say anything to each other. I think because well, she may blame Bela for the fact that Jace is dead on some level. Um, it could be part of that. It could also be like uh after Blood and Cheese, Aegon and Helena sort of pass each other in the hall and they don't react to each other. Um, and so they basically are just like, what do we even say here? You know, it it's just like, what can you say, right? Bela has lost her husband. Rhaenyra has lost a child, and Bela might feel like she is partially to blame for it, and Rhaenyra might also feel like she is partially to blame for it. Um, so yeah. Uh, well, I am trying to keep up with the chat here. That I cannot answer every single question that comes into chat, unfortunately, but I am doing what I can. Um, and no, it seems very much that Bela does not know it was Reyna. Um, so it's a situation where Jace saw it, but he died, and so at this point, nobody really has any idea of what's going on. um, but yeah, it's an interesting it's an interesting little dynamic that I cannot wait to, as I said, see where this actually ends up going. Um, and yeah, as I said, I think last time as well, I am also like I do these streams solo specifically so that I can interact with chat more. And I think next week I might also try and invite some people on and do one stream like this, and then like a halftime report for the season, like a little panel show where we get some people um going so that we can focus on like talking with each other a little bit more and get some other creators' opinions on how the show is going and bounce some ideas back and forth. So keep an eye out for that next week as well. I am going to try to do a solo stream like this so that we can all chat, but then yeah, I might do a panel show. Um, but so yeah, let's let's see. We have the scene where Rhaenyra is like looking at Viserys's bed and she's just like, "Yeah, no way, I can't sleep here." Um where basically uh basically as I said earlier, her father rotted for years and years, and that bed specifically is probably a very traumatic place for her to be expected to sleep. So then she goes and walks out, and I was curious if she was walking, like, to her childhood room, because that would seem like a reasonable place for Rhaenyra to go and sleep. Like, her and Daemon could just move into there. It seems like maybe she is actually her, um in her, like in Daemon's room, like, wherever Daemon would have stayed normally. Like, I did try to pay attention to see if they were the same room that, uh that she slept in when she was a kid, and I don't think it was, but maybe people in chat would have a better idea. But I imagine this must have just been where Damon has been sleeping the entire time that he is at court. Um, um, Thank you again, West of Westeros. So I assume you're just talking to the chat here, saying that you can at him with questions as well. So that also works if you want. But yes, I will continue to try and pay attention and things like that. Um, but so yeah, Rhaenyra and Daemon, we see them, you know, going to sleep, and um then Rhaenyra is getting ready to go and hear petitions for the first time, which is another parallel. They showed a scene where Aegon was hearing petitions for the first time, and now Rhaenyra is going to do that. And she is getting dressed with Alinda, and she thinks about how she must show strength and readiness. And then, unfortunately, she gets her period at a very inconvenient time. Um, so this is a thing that it is a situation in which I cannot personally relate, but I have heard this is a relatable fear and a relatable thing that will happen at plenty of times throughout a woman's life, where basically, um, at a really inconvenient time, uh, this will happen. Um, and so, yeah, I've seen some people upset about this happening or acting like it was a situation of like, oh, she can't do the job because she's a woman and she's on her period. It's like, no, that she does the job fine. She's just uncomfortable while doing it. She gets through it, and it doesn't affect her ability to do the thing. But it is obviously an uncomfortable situation that she has to deal with. So yeah, it is one of those situations. Um I don't have a Discord, but I do hang out some in the Interesting Nerd Club Discord. So I'm not very active on Discord very often, but to the extent I am, usually it's in there. But yeah, I I'm not online enough to moderate a Discord. So that is the current state of things. I would not have the time. It would purely take away from time in it would purely take away from time I can spend making content if I were trying to also moderate a community. So yeah. it's one of those things where I would rather use that time making new videos than moderating Discord. Um, but so yes, Rhaenyra toughs it out and she goes and she hears the petitions, even though she is uncomfortable. And this lady comes and she's just like, "Hey, it's my job to make clothes, and all the sheep are being eaten by dragons." And Rhaenyra is just like, um, "Well, it can we shear them before we feed them to the dragons?" And it's like, I imagine they were doing that already. That's not really a permanent solution. um, it's kind of a temporary solution. And as a as a butcher points out, he's like, okay, sure, you can shear them before you feed them to the dragons, but it is not going to provide the people with meat. Like it doesn't really fully solve the problem. Um, so yeah, it's a tough situation because the dragons do need to eat, um, and more so when they're constantly fighting in a war. But yeah, uh, so Rhaenyra suggests, okay, well, what if we consider allowing you to hunt in the Kingswood? And Corlys has to step up and be like, whoa, 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 Rhaenyra, that's a crazy thing. The Kingswood is like sacred. It is like the sacred right of the ruler to hunt in the Kingswood. And he says that would be a bold gesture, Your Grace, one that must be discussed in a forum that is not this. And Rhaenyra is like, okay, we'll consider it. Maybe rabbits, not boars or stags or anything like that. Um, so she kind of backs down a little bit on her initial idea, which I think is a funny parallel to when Aegon first sat on the throne and he was hearing petitions, and he's just like, "Oh, this shepherd is mad that a tenth of his flock have been taken to feed to the dragons." And he says, "Of course, we will make your flock of sheep whole." And his hand, Otto Hightower, has to step in and be like, "Listen, Your Grace, we can't do that. We can't just give this guy back his taxes because he came and asked for it." So yeah, I think uh, like Aegon just doesn't understand what he's even saying here. And I again definitely a parallel because it's two people who are petitioning about sheep, and the ruler is just like saying the first idea that comes to their mind, and the hand in both cases has to step in and be like, no, you can't do that. I'm sorry, that's not a reasonable solution to this problem. So yeah, another parallel here, and again we are looking at the poll, and we are currently at 56% of you think Aegon did a better job in his first days on the throne compared to Rhaenyra. 56 to 44 currently, with about 150-ish votes. Um, but yeah, so it is cool, I think, the way that they're drawing these parallels. Um, and then Sylvie is one of the people who gives one of these petitions, and she says that the rich and the noble lords stored away a bunch of food while all of the small folk went hungry. And so Rhaenyra and Mysaria and Daemon are having a conversation about what they do about this. And Mysaria asks, "What would your father do?" And Rhaenyra says, "A banquet, I think," which is some setup for a scene that we will get to a little bit later on. Um, so then we see the knighting of the dragon seeds, and we get one of the funniest exchanges of the whole episode. She asks Ulf, "How will you style yourself?" And he goes, "Targaryen, Your Grace." He's look at that little smile on his face. He's just like, proudly like, "Of course I want to be one of you. What are you talking about? We're all family here, you and me. We're the same." Like, that is basically his vibe the entire time. Like when he's dealing with these royals, like he like goes and grabs Jace's hair when he first sees him. He's like, "We're just alike, you and me." First time he sees Daemon, he's like, "The Rogue Prince," and he goes to try give him a hug because his whole life he's been saying how he's half brother to Daemon. Uh, and so he is like basically he is trying to relate to these royals who definitely don't view him as equals. And when he says he'll style himself as a Targaryen, Rhaenyra's like, "Oh, absolutely not." And he's like, "Oh, well, then I have no style." And Daemon says, "So fashion one." And he decides to call himself Ulf White. Uh, then Hugh says he will go by Hammer. So it's Ulf the White, Hugh the Hammer, and Adam of Hull. And you can see how disappointed Adam is to be styled Adam of Hull rather than Adam Velaryon. He was expecting, and Corlys was expecting, that he would be Adam Velaryon by now, and Rhaenyra is not going to do that. You can see it is a fraught little topic, as she says. She sort of hesitates. She's like, and Adam of Hull doesn't ask him how he's styling himself. She makes up that decision on her own. Um, in this new world, Hadi Part 2, Sheep Stealer in the Vale can't afford a Sheep Stealer. Just saying they need Rhaena. Um, you clarify what you mean here. Are you just saying that, like, they can't? I understand that they can't afford a sheep stealer because sheep stealer is stealing all of the sheep from the shepherds, and that is probably not going. Oh, are you saying they need Rhaena because her taming the dragon will, in theory, stop him from just constantly stealing the wild sheep? Because yes, that makes sense. I imagine that must be what you're getting at, is they need Rhaena to come in and get Sheep Stealer out of there and back to Dragonstone. But the problem with that is, of course, that Rhaena, it would seem, is now on the run, on the lam, if you will, with Sheep Stealer, and they're just basically doing the exact same thing. I imagine they're going to have to be right back to just stealing sheep this entire time anyway, which is in that case, it doesn't really solve the Vale's problem of, oh, yep, our sheep are constantly being stolen by this dragon, because now it's just he needs to steal sheep for himself and to regurgitate and feed to his rider. So I don't know. I don't know if Rhaena has really helped the Vale all that much. Um, and yeah, I don't understand this. I've seen people uh say they don't like Ulf. I don't get it. I don't get why, like Ulf is one of the funny characters. I don't understand why people dislike Ulf. It's he's I mean, he's awesome. Ulf is great. Every little misunderstanding of how the feudal system works from Ulf is just hilarious to me. Um so yeah, I really do like Ulf, and I have also been confused by that some people are annoyed with him. Um because yeah, I think he's hilarious. This guy who just doesn't accept the traditional reverence that he's supposed to show to the royals, and he just treats them like all of us are normal people. Like, that's a very funny dynamic to watch these people who like view themselves as gods and everyone else as lesser. They have to like deal with the fact that this guy is just like, oh yeah, we're like basically the same. We're both just people. And in fact, we're both people from the same family. So we're two peas in a pod here. And all of them are like, no, we're not. Like, stop that. um, but so yeah. Uh the Daemon then knights all of the dragon seeds. He charges them in the name of the warrior to be brave, in the name of the father to be just, and in the name of the mother to defend the young and the innocent. And then Ulf gets to be an audience stand-in for a moment when he goes, "Is that it?" And this is funny because, like, we've only heard the first few, like, knights' vows. We hear in the uh name of the father, in the name of the mother, in the name of the warrior, right? Um, and we assume, like, okay, where are the other? There are seven gods. Even if you don't have one for the stranger, are there more vows that are part of the knighting vows that we just haven't heard yet? And so we were wondering, like, is that it? Is that like the actual full vow? And Ulf is just like, wait, is that it? Because he has the same thought that I think many people in the audience have. So it is very funny to have him just straight up be the audience stand-in. And like, you don't see it in the screenshot, but when he asks this, the other two dragon seeds look at him like, dude, don't screw this up for us. Stop asking stupid questions, man. I thought that was very funny. The other thing that you don't like see unless you really look for it is when he says he's going to be Ulf the White, and Rhaenyra says, "Oh, that's good." He looks like super proud of himself. He's like, "Okay, cool. I got it right. I came up with a good name for myself." Um, and so yeah, it's like it's just before this screenshot, but like he looks very like satisfied with himself in the background when Rhaenyra accepts his name being white. Um, so yeah, Ulf is very funny in this whole scene, and yeah, this is actually well, no, actually no, this makes sense. I when you said this, I was like, oh yeah, that is kind of crazy, but also, they expect Reyna is on a ship to Pentos or in Pentos. Um, it is definitely true they are not keeping tabs on her, but like, yeah, the fact that they haven't heard yet that she has arrived in Pentos, I assume it's just because it hasn't actually been that long in world. But yeah, they definitely think that she's still in the Vale or on the way to Pentos. Um, so yeah, it's it is a funny situation. We're having some Ulf slander in the chat saying he's just a greedy, mean, drunk trash can person with a dragon. I mean, what have we seen him do that is that mean? I wouldn't. I mean, I don't dispute him being a drunk. I don't dispute that. It was Hugh Hammer who beat up another dude to take his to take his vegetables during the blockade. I'm trying to remember. I mean, maybe Ulf has done some very mean things that I'm just forgetting about. But I do accept that he's not like a great person. I just think he's pretty funny. Um, but like, oh, and yeah, what does Ulf actually do for money before this? I think he was mostly drinking on the reputation of being a dragon seed, right? I that was kind of the vibe that I got. Like, he is well known around the city for being a dragon seed, and a bunch of people buy him drinks and pay him to tell stories about his Targaryen heritage. I don't know if he has a job beyond that. I'm not really sure. Um, Hello, welcome, and welcome to anyone joining late. Feel free to vote in our poll. Who did a better job their first days on the job, Aegon or Rhaenyra? We're currently chilling at 56% for Aegon. So yeah. Um, and yeah, I think this tracks. He's greedy in the way that people who have been poor their entire lives are greedy. Especially now that he's working directly with the royals and is like a very important part of their war effort. I mean, I would expect to be rewarded. I wouldn't maybe handle things in the way that Ulf does. Um, and I did see one other comment. Yes, his table manners are not great. I will grant you that. He was rude during the dinner, as well. But you know, there are many worse sins in this world than being a bit rude at dinner. Rhaenyra, one could argue, is a bit rude at dinner later in this episode. Um, but yeah, so this is another question that I have, right? So Hugh the Hammer is reasonably being like, okay, so where do I live now? You said you would provide a life for me and my wife if I could take this dragon, and I did. And he says that she has gone to live in Tumbleton with her brother. And Rhaenyra is like, look, go find her. I will have a house for you at some point on Visenya's Hill. I don't have any money or a council to handle this right now. I am awash in dilemmas and deficiencies, as she says, but she promises that eventually he will have a house for him and his wife. Uh, so I feel like she could have been like, hey, until then, you live here, right? Like, you live in court in the Red Keep, but maybe that's like implied because that's where he's already living. I don't really know, but it feels like she could have handled this a little bit better as well, being like, "Look, of course, like you will have everything you need. Just hang tight. We will get you a house. Until then, your room is here," and then show him where he can live now. But the big question I have is how is his wife in Tumbleton when last episode she watched fly overhead on a dragon in King's Landing. When all of the dragons are rolling into King's Landing, we get a bunch of shots of small folk like Sylvie and Ulf's drinking buddies and Hugh's wife. is specifically one of the people that we see in King's Landing last episode. I just I don't know. I don't know, man. Like, what when the timing, the window of time for her to have left and head to Tumbleton has to be, like, crazy. Like, why like, if I were to headcanon it myself, she sees these dragons flying over, and she doesn't see that Hugh is on one of them, or she doesn't believe that Hugh would have been one of the few to tame a dragon, so she doesn't want to find out that he is dead. Like, she's just like, "Oh, like, the dragons are here. If I stick around, I'm gonna have to face the fact that my husband died." Um, it's a it's a situation of, like, dang, like, I gotta get out of here so that I don't have to face this reality. And maybe that's why she leaves, like, right as Hugh supposedly arrives. Um, but yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know. And sorry, unfortunately, no, I'm doing these streams solo so that I can interact with chat and all that good stuff. But thank you again for the support. Um, but yeah, uh like it it is a weird situation. It is a weird situation in which uh we see her here the last episode when the dragons all arrive, and then this episode he's just like, I went to look for her and she's gone. Like, okay, why didn't you just not show her in the shots of the small folk that we're seeing? Like, it would have been it would have made more sense, but minor little nitpick, I guess. So Rhaenyra is, yeah, I guess maybe it is implied that she's leaving, and like it has been a couple days. I will say that, like we know it's been a couple of days. We think since Rhaenyra and them rolled into the throne room and all of that. So like yeah, if she is leaving actively in this specific scene, then you know, like yeah, that is I assume how the timing would have to work out. Is it is literally like she is leaving right here, right now, and then in 2 days' time or whatever, she's just gone. But yeah, that is probably the way that we have to make sense of it. Um, but yeah, it is a little weird for sure. Um, so and you would think, right? You would think she would stick around if she's like, well, my husband went to try claim a dragon. Okay, the people who claim dragons are back. You would think she'd stick around to at least see is her husband alive or dead before she would leave. But as I said, maybe she is literally just like, I assume he's dead and I don't want to deal with that. But but thank you for hanging out, West of Westeros. Thank you for the super chats. Hope you have a good night as well. Um, but yes, uh, yeah, I don't think it's all the same day. Because and we know it's not all the same day because later on when she says she has Darren, she said he came to the castle 2 days ago as part of the surrender. So this takes place over a few days. So we just have to assume that this specific scene is a few days after they had all the dragons fly in. So yeah, it's interesting, and yeah, I imagine they are riding. She must have taken a carriage, but yeah, it's minor nitpick, but it is a bit of a weird situation for her to already be in Tumbleton. But okay, so Rhaenyra is like trying to relax after a stressful day of ruling the kingdom, and Alicent comes to meet her and ask that her father's remains be sent to Old Town so that they may rest beside her mother. And um yeah, it is a reasonable request, and Rhaenyra grants it, which is good. She didn't like alienate further another person by being like, nope, his head's gotta stay on a spike, Alicent. Uh so yeah, she is at least not further alienating Alicent, even though she did chop off Otto's head. Um, but then they have a nice little interesting conversation about ruling King's Landing because Uh, Alicent has ruled King's Landing for like a decade. When Viserys was dying, Alicent and Otto were basically in charge, and Rhaenyra asks her how she handled that. Um, she's just like, "How did you bear it?" And Alicent said, "It's hard. You'll have to do things that you would never do before you took the throne. You may not rule and remain yourself. And you have to turn your face away while people suffer and die." And it's correct. Like, it's a very difficult thing to be responsible for fixing the problems of all of these people, many of which are life and death problems, and some of those you won't have a solution for. Uh So there is just nothing you can do in a lot of these cases other than just have to deal with the fact that people are suffering on your watch. And yeah, it's not great. It's not great. Um and then she says, "Well, my father didn't have to change who he was in order to rule." And Allison says, "Your father lived in a world of his own construction. Viserys ruled in peacetime, unopposed, in prosperity, and was a bit delulu. He would ignore problems. He would just kind of hand wave away a lot of issues. And as I said, everything was pretty darn good during Viserys's reign. He didn't even realize what giant succession crisis he sort of created at the end of his life. So yeah, I think this is a pretty accurate statement from Alicent that Viserys was able to avoid a lot of these issues because things were pretty good. He ignored it when things didn't go perfectly, and he sat and played with his Valyrian city model a lot of the time, which maybe would be therapeutic for Rhaenyra if she had any time to do that, but she does not. And yeah, Vizzy T just wanted to build his Legos, and yeah, understandable. Very understandable. Um, And yeah, no, this is fair. Maybe asking what would Viserys do is not the best like solution for asking how you would rule. Um, but yeah, yeah. No, and this dynamic is great. Like the dynamic between Alicent and Rhaenyra this season has almost made me forgive Rhaenyra sneaking into the Sept in order to go meet with Alicent, because like the ultimate payoff for that was that scene where Alicent walks into the throne room and finds Otto's head laying there and has to look up at Rhaenyra and be like, "You did this? What?" Like, it is it's I'm not gonna say I liked Rhaenyra sneaking into the Sept, but it is more understandable now in hindsight why they kept the dynamic between the two of them. Um and yeah, Viserys did have like um he was good at dealing with people. He wasn't great at putting his foot down with people, but you know, like Viserys. I don't know what he would have done in a lot of these situations. He had that whole conversation with Lionel where he was like, "I wish I had been tested. I think maybe I would have been forged into a different person." And I think that is true. If Viserys had to take the throne in the exact circumstances that Rhaenyra is having to take the throne, he would have been a very different ruler by the end of it. I think that is, I think, a reasonable way to look at things. And yeah, this is also a good point. He uh he was also spending like the last decade of his life on Milk of the Poppy, so of course he was in his own world. That is very true. And yeah, he was a people pleaser for sure. Um yes, he was liked and not necessarily well respected. It was as you could see it with Otto, who knew him better than anybody, right? That it was a you don't realize what you have till it's gone situation. When Otto had that moment with Aegon where he's just like, the realm is poorer for the fact that Viserys is not here. Um, it's a it's a it's a situation in which, like, yeah, a bunch of people definitely took advantage of Viserys, and Rhaenyra can't afford that at this point. And yes, he misliked confrontation. And yeah, Yeah, Rhaenyra should just get Otto Hightower to go deal with this. So I mean, why can't she just do that? Oh wait, that's right. She chopped his head off, and her current hand of the queen, who she could send to deal with things, well, he kind of hates her now because she refuses to legitimize his kids. So many problems, some of which definitely of her own making. Um, and yeah, Allison says that they have never set foot in Viserys's little make-believe world that he lived in. Um, so then yeah, she is having that banquet that she thought when Mysaria asked what Viserys would do, she said a banquet. And so now she's having a banquet with all of the lords and or the minor lords and rich merchants essentially of King's Landing. That's who all these people are. Some minor lords from the crown lands and rich merchants from within the city, and she is saying basically, I'm glad you have all pledged your loyalty, even though it's not as soon as I would have expected. And then she's like making nice little small talk, and then they bring out the feast. And the feast is the Dunk of Flea Bottom special. A rat, and I'm not sure, are those like little worms or like is that just like grime from the gutters and worms and rats? Is that am I correct? Or does anyone know what that flea bottom spaghetti looking thing is if it's not worms, because I do think it's probably worms, right? And she says, this is what the common folk of my city ate. Yeah, maggots is yeah, maggots or worms for sure, right? Um, and yeah, she says, this is what the small folk of my city ate, and you guys are all storing all of the good food away. Uh, Okay, they said it's supposed to be maggots and gruel. Yeah, that does track. That is basically what it looked like. Yeah. Um. So yeah. She basically insults all of them, being like, "Yeah, well, all of the small folk were starving. You guys were buying up all of the food and storing it away in your houses." And she has a point, and so do they, right? Like what? Like um so she says to the one guy's like, well, the small folk are like rats. They overrun the city and they're always wanting and all this. And she's like, would you not do the same if your children were starving? And he's like, no, I wouldn't. And she's like, oh, well, then you would lie genteel in your grave or something like that. Um, so then like she points out to him, like, wouldn't you do the same if your children were starving, as what the small folk are doing? And he is saying, no, I wouldn't, but he's wrong. Like, if he were in the position of the small folk, he would act like the small folk. And if the small folk were in the position of these people, they would act like them, right? Like, if you were in these people's positions and you had the money to put away 2 weeks worth of food in an uncertain food situation where you don't know when the city is going to run out of food, they were basically under siege. So, like, if you could choose between your family surviving for the next 2 weeks or your family starving to death, I think most people are going to do what these people did. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if the chat is going to call me a heartless person for that, but let's just say, like, when lockdown hit for the old 19 back there, I had a stockpile of toilet paper already ready. I was not my butt was not going wanting, and I had my cans of beans. I had I had the stockpile, and I don't think that stockpiling in a situation where the stores are running out of food is a bad thing necessarily. Um, but I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they should have starved to death, and that would have made Rhaenyra happier. I don't really know. Um, but and yeah, well, this is fair. And yeah, like keeping a month's worth of food on standby. We don't know how much uh how much food they had stored away. As Damon says later, like, hey, this will only help a small portion of King's Landing for a short time, basically. So it doesn't really seem like they were, it doesn't seem like they stockpiled like 3 years worth of food in all of their houses. It seems kind of like they're just like, well, the food is running out. We're going to buy what we can now so that we don't starve over the next month or whatever, right? Um, so yeah, it is, I suppose, interesting. It's an interesting question as to uh how wrong they were. But Rhaenyra treats them as though they have done this horrible thing. And uh they said, "Look, what would you have us do?" Basically, they're like, "Would you have had us starve with our families?" And then Rhaenyra tells them, "Well, all of the police are going and invading your homes while you guys are here at dinner, and we're taking the food back," which is wild, wild shenanigans. Like, this lady's reaction is absolutely correct. She's like, "Oh my god, she invited us to dinner and she's robbing us." And Rhaenyra is basically like, "Look, it's not robbery, it is a duty to the crown, and you should expect that this is how you will behave from now on." Um, so yeah, and yet, no, this is fair. Stockpiling and price gouging can absolutely be a huge problem, but it is a natural, like, the price gouging is one thing. The stockpiling, I do feel like, is a natural human instinct, um, as well. And also, I'll throw it out there. My stockpile was built before things got bad. So I don't feel that bad. It's not like I was going to the store and buying the last 20 cans of beans or whatever before the grocery stores run out. But also, it did feel good to have a stockpile when everyone was like, "Ah, guy can't get toilet paper anymore." I'm just like, "Well, I got 3 months worth at least. I'll probably be all right." Um, but yeah, no, it's and yeah, they don't have like that much ability to store food for the long term either. So that's the thing. Like, it's they can't have had that long of a food supply built up, right? It feels like food coming in constantly is a requirement, right? It's not like they're stockpiling canned goods that could last them a decade. Um, but yeah, no, like, this is like one of the most bonkers maneuvers that Rhaenyra pulls this entire episode. And yeah, like, yeah, I'm just checking chat here for their takes on the morality of trying not to let your family go without, essentially. Well, and that's the thing. So I don't know how much they have left over to steal back. It seems like several carts worth, but at the same time, like, and here's the other aspect of this. And like, the other aspect of this, which Torrin Manderley brings up, and yeah, stockpiling like a wagon load. Like, even if each of these families, right? Even if each of these noble families had a wagon load, that's not that much. That's like a month worth of food, maybe, right? Like, for a whole family to survive on. Um, it's not like, it's not like Rhaenyra has like a caravan of like 300 wagons loaded up with food that that she takes back. And yeah, she could have done this in such a way in which it wasn't as insulting and punishing to all of these people, and that she didn't make them all hate her, but she didn't do that. Um but so then the other point of this whole interaction is brought up here by our man Sir Torrin Manderley. Um so basically he says, look, this is a bold move and the small folk will cheer it. It may even make them forget that it was your blockade, which is something that cannot be lost in all of this. The fault that the small folk were starving is not the fault of these random nobles. It's Rhaenyra. Like, Rhaenyra and Mysaria used the hunger of the small folk. And that's the other thing. Mysaria talks all the time about, oh, the suffering of the small folk. Oh, no, the small folk are suffering. But it's like, Mysaria, you actively, like, masterminded a blockade in order to make the small folk suffer so that they would put your new bestie on the throne. Like, Rhaenyra and Mysaria are not blameless in this whole situation. In fact, they are more to blame than any of the people that Rhaenyra just served a rat to. So that is definitely a situation in which you kind of got to consider that, you know? Um, and Torrin Manderley calls her out on it very directly. I hope we see more of Torrin in the future. I assume that we will, because they specifically went out of their way to set him up. So yeah. So then we get this wonderful scene between Daemon and Rhaenyra as Daemon is trying to essentially convince her that, like, hey, we have a bunch of dragons, we could conquer the entire world. And they're talking about how the treasury is empty, and so Daemon is tasked with flying to the Vale and saying, Jane Eyre, you never sent all those swords that were promised to us. You can pay us now in gold instead. And Daemon is supposed to return either with gold or with promises of gold. Um, and this is where Daemon is like pitching her of like, hey, you don't understand yet how powerful you are. Like, you have 6 dragons. Aegon the Conqueror only had 3. It's a power beyond imagining. And he says Dorne could be ours, then Essos and the Free Cities, and Yi and all of its riches. And off in the Far East, there is supposedly a city where men have wings. And Rhaenyra remembers wishing to go there and see them for herself before life became so complicated. Uh, and Daemon says, you will have an empire unassailable. And Rhaenyra points out that her father said that dragons were a power that no man should trifle with. And he understood that there was such a thing as too much power. Um, so then uh she tells Daemon that the dream, because Daemon is basically pitching like we should be gods and we should reform a new Valyrian empire, and she says that the dream of old Valyria ended in the Doom. And Daemon just like annoyed, and he walks away. He says, "Your Grace," and walks away. And then as he's like going inside, he yells back, "And you still have to kill Darren." It's just like, okay. Which led to this meme, which I'm sure many of you saw. I posted earlier that this was exactly how I felt about this conversation. I am Rhaenyra and Jon Snow here, where I'm like, when Daemon is pitching, hey, we should conquer the world with our dragons, I'm just like, I mean, he's got a point. What a guy. He's got a good point there. And then when Daenerys was doing it at the end of season 8, I was like, oh no, she's gone crazy. So that is why this meme came to my mind. But I'm like, no, this is exactly how I felt when both of these two people were pitching, like, okay, we just took King's Landing with our dragons. Now it's time to go conquer the world. I'm just like, yeah, Damon, you should go. You should go conquer Yi and those winged men. You do deserve that, bud. And then Daenerys is like, well, anyone who opposes us, we will burn, and they don't get to choose. I'm just like, ooh, Danny, ooh, no, no. So yeah, but no, they are both kind of nuts. That is absolutely true. And yes, no, this is like this episode. I've heard people make this comparison, and it's absolutely correct. Like, if Daenerys had had an episode or two like this in season 8, and then she went kind of crazy, it would have worked so much better. Like, all of the last like 3 or 4 seasons of Game of Thrones needed more time and needed more like actual buildup of what was happening. And when people say that, they mean episodes like this. Danny needed a few episodes like this. Like, she needed a genuine arc that got her to that point. Um, but yeah, it's it's like I loved this whole conversation here. Basically, like, yeah, Damon he's showing us what would have happened had he been the king instead of Rhaenyra, and I think that's one of the most interesting parts of all of this. And um and yeah, this is a good point. When he's at war, he'd be a good king in wartime, but not necessarily in peacetime, and that's why potentially he wants to go to war. Um and yeah, like, I do agree. This is absolutely showing us that Damon would not have been a great king, um, because he's a conqueror, not a ruler. In you know. in his heart, at his core, that's what he wants to do. So there is, though, one interesting thing that I will say I feel like might partially play into what the pitch Damon is making here. So, if you remember, when Damon is telling Rhaenyra about his vision that he saw, he says he saw a Targaryen girl, a girl with silver hair, in a desert far away with dragons at her breasts. And then he pitches her, like when they start speaking in High Valyrian, he pitches her like, this is what the prophecy requires of us. This is what the promise of dragons has always been. And okay, if you think about this, because we talked a lot last episode about the prophecy and how essentially prophecies often mislead people and make them think they need to do things that they don't to their own detriment. Daemon saw this prophesied moment that is apparently going to be very important of a Targaryen girl in a desert far away with 3 dragons at her breasts that were just born. The current ruling, like the current realm, does not contain any deserts. Like, they have not yet conquered Dorne. There are deserts over in Essos, but not in Westeros. Daemon might literally see the vision that he was shown, and he might think, oh, if this vision is going to come true, we need to conquer more. Like, we need to have a desert, or the prophecy cannot take place because I saw her in a desert. He might think like, hey, I'm pitching you that we need to go conquer the world because I've seen the future, and in the future, some faraway place that I've never seen before is where this prophesied hero is going to be. So if you want to like steel man what Daemon is pitching here when he says like, hey, this is what the prophecy requires, this is the promise of dragons, he kind of does have a point. Like that's also part of why I liked this scene so much, is like in his head he might be like, oh well, we got to conquer the world to save the world. Which, knowing what we know, obviously, well, they eventually do conquer Dorne, but the desert in which Daenerys hatches her dragons is not part of the realm ruled by the Targaryens, but he is probably incorrect about that. Like, he is, as so many are, misled by what he has seen in the prophecy. So yeah, I think this is a really interesting conversation. And as I mentioned earlier, he is just like me when I play Crusader Kings. He's just like, look, man, there's something nearby. We're strong enough to take it. Let's go take it. Come on, let's go. Let's go, Rhaenyra. We got dragons and they don't. So yeah, the very, very interesting conversation between Daemon and Rhaenyra here. I think basically still completely summed up perfectly with this meme about the workplace rules for conquering King's Landing with your dragons. And yeah, like I literally, that's again why I made this meme, is I'm sitting here like, oh damn, he's got kind of a good point. Whereas when Daenerys did it, I'm like, oh no, she's crazy, oh no. Granted, and I did like the context for why I think that is because right before Daenerys did that, she burned the entirety of King's Landing, whereas Daemon did not just burn the entirety of King's Landing. If Daemon had done a Daenerys on all of the citizens of King's Landing and then made the same pitch, he would have been in the bottom panel right along with Dany. But in the context that it was actually pitched, this feels pretty darn accurate. And yeah, Dany did it with the thread over. Yeah, it's oh yeah, I haven't seen. I should check in the uh Crusader Kings mod what Daemon's traits are. That would be interesting. Um, but okay. So then we yeah, this is definitely true. A classic misreading of prophecy. I need to go do the thing I want in order to make what's destined to happen. Because, like, yeah, but this is a thing that a lot of people do, and that seems to be what Daemon is doing in this scene. Is like people will take prophecy to mean, oh, I got to go do the thing that I want to do, but the prophecy demands it. Whereas Daemon I think just does want to be a god and conquer the world and have his children rule the world forever and a day, as he says. And uh, he is, I think, on some level, he is believing in his heart that the prophecy requires this because, again, no deserts in the realm, and he knows that in the future this Targaryen girl will be born in a desert, or will have dragons born in a desert, and that's somehow important to the coming darkness. So yeah, he, I think, genuinely does think, look, we got to go conquer some deserts, but also he really just wants to go conquer a bunch of things. So yeah, it's great. Um, and yeah, like in a Clash of Kings, everyone thinks that the Red Comet is a good omen for them. And yeah, we are pretty darn sure it is about Dany, and the return of magic in general, but like Dany is the one who gets the actual, you know, tangible difference in her life, seemingly because of the Red Comet with the dragons. Um, but yes, it is very funny how George handles that, and I think they're doing a good job with it in the show, despite some people's protesting that they are not. I tend to disagree, and I think this is another scene that made that whole prophecy angle stronger, because again, you can see the misleading of the prophecy, how it would make Damon go on and make this pitch. But okay. So then, yeah, he tells her, you still have to kill Darren. And then we see a creepy scene of her, like, looking at Darren as he's carved this little, like, wooden bird looking thing, which I didn't grab a screenshot of. But she's, like, holding this little toy that he's making. And she's looking at him and she's like, he's just a little kid. Like, can I really just kill this little kid? That doesn't seem like the right thing to do. And, yeah, good night. Good night. Yes, thank you all for hanging out. It is a bit of a late stream for many people, but no, well, Aegon may have just also wanted to be a conqueror. That is true. Like, but also, I do think the prophecy is like that is from George. The idea that Aegon had a dream that he needs to conquer Westeros. I think that absolutely came from George. Um, I don't think in the books it's going to be engraved in secret lettering on the cat's paw dagger the way that we see in the show. That part of the whole thing I feel like isn't necessarily needed, but like Daenerys the Dreamer, she got a dream that they needed to leave Valyria, and that's the only reason the Targaryens survived. I think a lot of these dreams are like the old gods or whoever, probably the old gods or Bran, sending dreams to these people throughout history in order to make the timeline work out the way that it does so that the others can eventually be defeated. So I do genuinely think Daenerys the Dreamer needed to get that dream so that the Targaryens could go to Dragonstone, and then Aegon the Conqueror needed to be shown this dream so that they would unite the Seven Kingdoms and, you know, have the Targaryen lineage go on to the point where eventually Dany and Jon would be created, and Dany and Jon would be there at the end times to fulfill, you know, the role that was needed to save the world. Um, so there are people who get prophecies that it does in the end help them. Like Daenerys the Dreamer and Aegon the Conqueror, and then there are people who get prophecies that in the end destroy them, like Rhaegar Targaryen seems to have, where he tries to follow what he thinks the prophecy requires, and it basically destroys his entire life and his family and everything. So, yeah, it's a mixed bag with prophecy. It's not always going to bite your prick off, but most of the time, I think it will. Um, and why wasn't Valyria global? Why wasn't it a global empire? I actually did a video on why they never conquered Westeros, and it's because of prophecy. Their mages foretold that the gold of Casterly Rock would destroy the Valyrian Empire, and so that's why they never conquered Westeros at the very least. They were conquering most of Essos and bringing it into their empire before the Doom. So had they never been uh, you know, had they never been doomed, they may have eventually conquered everything but Westeros. But yeah, Lannister gold was the thing that supposedly was going to lead to their destruction. And I have a whole video breaking down, like, okay, well, did that happen or is that going to happen? Because there is a very interesting scene with Tyrion where like he is getting a bunch of cell swords and they're going to switch to Dany's side at the end of A Dance with Dragons. That's where we leave him. And he joins those cell swords by signing away a ton of gold that he doesn't even have from Casterly Rock. So like there are Tyrion based debt schemes involving the gold of Casterly Rock that could still eventually lead to Dany's downfall in some way. So like maybe the last of the Valyrian dragon lords will be doomed in some way by the Lannister gold. I think it's an interesting situation. The other possibility is, of course, that the Lannister gold in some way funded what caused the doom. Uh, so it's a very interesting situation that we don't know if that's a thing that has already happened and it led to the end of the Valyrian Empire, or if it's something that's going to lead to the downfall of Dany, because Tyrion in the show did kind of at least take part in Dany's downfall. So, it's an interesting situation. So Rhaenyra is talking with Massaria, and this is another paralleled scene uh where Aegon was riding to his coronation in a wagon just like this one, possibly this one, with Alicent, and he was like kind of bored and just, you know, oh, father didn't want me to be king, blah blah blah. Like, and Alicent was like giving him the pep talk of like, you can do this, like this is what you're meant to do. And Rhaenyra here is riding with Massaria to her anointing essentially by the people, not by the High Septon, as Massaria will say later. And she is super tired and not sleeping well, and Massaria is trying to like build her up a little bit. And Rhaenyra says that she can't sleep in that bed, and Massaria jokingly suggests like perhaps a new mattress. Like I'm assuming that Massaria realizes the reason that Rhaenyra can't sleep in that bed is because it is a very difficult thought to imagine sleeping in the bed where your father died and where he spent the last decade of his life rotting away, and where Aegon was sleeping and was horribly burned, and lots of bad memories in that specific bedroom for Rhaenyra. So she's understandably having trouble sleeping, and it's not really got anything to do with the mattress. So I think Massario was being a little bit funny there. And then she says, "You're burying your grief." And Rhaenyra says, "I feel no grief. I feel nothing." And she says, "Well, no, there is rage. This rage that she just can't quite grasp, essentially." Um, and so, yeah, Rhaenyra's mental state is not terrific right now. She is kind of like numb to all of the grief that she has. And she says that she will look upon those who killed her sons. So it's a understandable situation that she's in. She is just, yeah, she can't sleep. She is incredibly upset. She is burying her grief because she has to, because there's a million problems that she has to deal with. And it's not a good time for Rhaenyra at this point emotionally. Oh yeah, did her mom also die in that same bed? I don't know if that was the bed she was giving birth in or not. I don't think it was, but if she did, that is a whole nother wrinkle into this as well. I feel like I remember the layout of that room being differently. Because they came in, like Viserys comes in from the side when Emma is giving birth, and he like goes around a corner. So I don't think it's the same room layout. Yeah, it was the queen chambers, didn't have a canopy, it was not in the big bed. That's yeah. Remembering back, that is what I think as well. Um, but same building, right? Like there's a lot of trauma in the Red Keep for Rhaenyra in general, but very specifically in that bed. Um, so yeah. But Massaria says that this will be your anointing, and Rhaenyra gives a speech to the small folk about how she has been too long away, but their rightful queen has returned, and she will rule judiciously. And all of the small folk cheer her because they have empty baskets and are starving, and she hands out a bunch of food for them for for the small folk. And oh, I just realized I had more than 100 slides here, but apparently that is the limit of my slideshow. I only had like a few more here, so I'm gonna have to. We're not. Unfortunately, we might have to either. Let's see. I think I can do this. If I just delete a bunch of slides from the beginning, I think I can load in another presentation here. This was the episode I've had to have the most slides for. I did think there might be a limit of 100, and I wasn't sure. Uh, but I have never actually needed more than 100 slides to cover an episode before. But this one had a lot of like dialogue and things happening like that. So I'm going to see if I can add a new slide while I am streaming, or add a new slideshow while I'm streaming with the rest of the slides here. So just bear with me for one moment, and we'll get that underway here. But checking back on our poll, we have closed into 53%. Aegon did a better job in their first days on the throne. 47% Rhaenyra, with nearly 200 votes. I think a lot of people must be giving Rhaenyra credit for how much more difficult her situation was than what Aegon had to deal with. So yeah, in any case, we should have the remainder of our slides here in the end of this one. So this is now after they have the little meeting with the small folk. They hand out all the baskets of food and things like that. And then Corlys comes and calls out Rhaenyra. And he's just like, so you knighted my son and you styled him Hull rather than Velaryon. I thought we had an agreement. And Rhaenyra is just like, look, let's come talk about this over here. And she's just like, look, in this moment, I cannot do as you ask. She says basically like, look, my children have always been accused of being illegitimate. I can't show up and on my first day start legitimizing a bunch of bastards so that they can inherit, because that's a bad look for me specifically, especially with Joffrey as, as Joffrey is my heir. And she says, perhaps one day when there's not so much scrutiny. And Corlys is not a fan of that. And he's just like, look, I've given everything to you. I have given everything. My family is destroyed. All of this in service of you. And I've never asked for anything else but this. And Rhaenyra is just like, look, I can't right now. I'm sorry. And Corlys gets to just go ham on Rhaenyra, and it's great. He says that Lucerys was a bastard. He says your children are bastards. He says Joffrey's a bastard. He says Lucerys was a bastard, and he says Jacaerys lived and died a bastard. And he's yelling loud enough that all these people in the background hear him and turn and look. So bro is just going very, very hard here, doing things that have gotten other people's heads chopped off. And he's screaming this publicly. It's going to be really interesting to see how their relationship recovers from this, because as I said earlier in the stream, Rhaenyra is wrong here. Like, she should absolutely be legitimizing these children, and she is not. And yeah, it's not a great look. Yeah, like the stream, anyone who's here. I don't know how many likes we have, but hopefully if you have made it this far into the stream, you drop a like. So yeah, thank you for the reminder. But yeah, this was a great scene. Like, I don't know if I have, like, I don't think I got quite the screenshot of it, but like, he makes the same face for a split second. Like, he looks like Vaemond right before Vaemond freaks out and screams that your children are bastards. Like, they look like brothers in this moment. And somewhere in the Drowned God's watery halls, or wherever Velaryons go, Vaemond is smiling up at Corlys, being like, yeah, you tell her, bro. You tell her. This is what she needs to hear. So yeah, uh, it's yeah, it's a very good scene. I very much enjoyed this, and I can't wait to see where the relationship goes between these two in the future episodes. Um, and yes, it was basically the same scene, other than Damon was not waiting there to chop the top half of Corlys's head off. So that is lucky enough. But yeah, like Rhaenyra has made so many bad political plays throughout this entire episode, and this is very high on the list. Um, I don't know if that would have helped, right? Like, how could he have lied about their mother? Because like evidently their mother was a dragon seed as well. That is the other kind of interesting part of this is like they don't get the dragon riding blood from him. The other children he had with Rhaenys get the blood from Rhaenys. So this shipwright that he was sleeping with must have been a dragon seed. Um, so yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Um, saying the timing was horrible. Bela and Reyna and their father were away. They needed to work out some marriage pacts. I don't know if she knows what Bela said. Oh, I'm guessing you're meaning when Bela kind of denied being Corlys's heir and said that Driftmark must pass to Salton Sea. And yeah, this is a thing. Like Rhaenys and Bela have essentially given Corlys their blessing in order to legitimize these kids. Um, and make Alan the heir. So like, yeah, it's a weird situation where like the only thing really standing against this is specifically Rhaenyra. Everyone else is on board with this, including even Rhaenys, who wanted Corlys's line to go on. She wanted it to go on through Laena's children with Baela or Rhaena, but at that point, um, yeah, it's a weird situation. Um, and yeah, we talked about this a little bit earlier on without any spoilery shenanigans. Bela confirming that Sunfire's dead is also a weird situation that I'm curious how they're going to handle that in the future. I don't know. Like I think nobody actually has any idea at this point if Sunfire is alive or dead. It would be a change um to have had Sunfire die in Rook's Rest. I won't go further than that, but in the books, Sunfire gets horribly wounded at Rook's Rest, but doesn't actually pass away. Um, oh, interesting. Okay, looked up Damon's traits in the CK3 mod. Thank you for the info. He is brave, wrathful, callous, and ambitious, has brilliant strategist and a bunch of military traits, and Blade Master plus Adulterer. That sounds like Damon. Yeah, I bet his stats got to be pretty awesome. I assume you can play as him because you can play as unlanded characters in CK3, I believe. I haven't done it yet. As I said, I've only had one like long playthrough of CK3 where I was kind of learning what I'm doing, and it was in the After the End mod. So I will maybe have to dive into the CK3 Game of Thrones mod at some point soon. But yeah, maybe that will be the save. Daemon and Rhaenyra's world conquest to rebuild the Valyrian Empire. If I do that, maybe I'll make a video about it. I don't know if it would be good for streaming, uh, but maybe like a if I play for like a week or whatever, maybe I'll record a bunch of it and put it in a video at some point if that's something people are really interested in. Um, but yeah, uh, and yeah, people are suggesting perhaps it's a false flag to hear about Sunfire. And that's the thing, like we are hearing about Sunfire right before Aegon is apparently about to get to Rook's Rest, so they could be setting it up for a big reveal or something. Because like they wouldn't really need to bring it up. Like either they're preparing us for the fact that Sunfire is dead, or they're preparing us for the reveal that aha, the greens are wrong or the blacks are wrong. Sunfire's actually alive. Like it, we'll find out. I think next episode because I think Aegon will probably get there. But yeah, it is one of the most interesting, I think, open questions at this point. Um, so we'll see. But yeah, here is Rhaenyra's reaction to Corlys calling all of her children bastards and saying they lived and died as bastards. It's like, oh no, me dealing with the consequences of my own actions. This is Rhaenyra, Rhaenyra having to deal with the consequences of her entire life's worth of actions, but also her last few days worth of actions. Um, and no, in the next episode trailer, the dragon flopped over the walls is Meleys. Because if you remember, Meleys had crashed down onto the wall directly and is probably just too large to move. So we have not seen Sunfire in any of the pre-episode stuff, as far as I've seen at least. But yeah, no, that is Meleys. And yeah, no, I mean, this is an interesting and fair question. Like, if it is alive, how is it getting food and water? Someone would have to be caring for the dragon, surely. But we don't really know. We don't really know. Um, and yeah, it would throw a big wrench into this whole situation if they try to call him an imposter. If he does have the dragon, that would change things a lot for sure. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's not that it's not tricky, right? But as Damon pointed out, Rhaenyra has a bunch of dragons. Like, she is underestimating her own power. She can create the world around her the way that Viserys did, right? But she is unwilling to. She could, I think, legitimize these guys. Um, and then, like, with the dragon seeds, the other ones besides Adam, Hugh and Ulf, she could give them family names and form cadet branches of House Targaryen as well, and that would probably make them happier than what she's doing now. She can't let them be called Targaryens and be fully legitimized. And I do believe that that is probably the actual biggest wrench thrown into this whole thing. But what Rhaenyra brings up is the whole like idea that, oh well, people will look badly on me if I'm legitimizing bastards because of my children and the rumors about them. Um, and I just don't think that's that big of a deal. Hugh and Ulf could become a bigger deal, but like again, honestly, like I feel like giving them a lordship somewhere and a cadet branch for their family is actually like probably a good political play. But she is not willing to do that. Um and yeah, she is unwilling to use her power except for when it comes to feeding rats to the minor nobles of King's Landing and the merchants. But yes, and yeah, like no, this I mean, it is a risk, of course, if she were to give cadet branches to Hugh and Ulf with their dragons, for sure. But also like she's given them dragons. That's the most important part. Like that is the part that is the big issue. And she's already crossed that bridge. So at this point, it feels like, it is the politically shrewd thing to do to keep them happy. But yeah. And yeah, no, this is also a good point. She only has one bastard left and then trueborn heirs as well. So like, yeah, the problem is not as big as it was 15 years ago when she just had her third bastard kid and had no trueborn full Targaryens. But yeah. Um so anyway though, we then have Alicent and Rhaenyra meeting, and Rhaenyra tells her that Daeron is here and that she is going to send him to the wall, not kill him. And Alicent's like, "You expect me to thank you for that? Like, he's done nothing wrong. I barely know him. I've only seen him once in the last 5 years, but like, it's still destroying Alicent to know that, okay, even her youngest son, who is mostly innocent in all of this, is now going to be sent to the wall." Um, yeah, it's a tough thing for her to hear. So then she wants to go and meet with Daron. And it is in this scene where Alicent asks how long Darren's been in the castle, and she says 2 days. So that does kind of give us our timeline for the fact that at least a couple days have passed throughout this episode. And Alicent wants to go and see Darren. And then when she does, she's just like, who is this? Like, she gives this look of like, who is this? And I've seen a bunch of people say, like, oh, why is she not lying? Why is she not playing along? It's like, that's a terrible idea. That would be a terrible idea for Alicent to deceive Rhaenyra in this moment. She doesn't know what game is being played by Ormond. She just knows that this isn't her kid. Um, like, she is in no position to lie to Rhaenyra. She is a prisoner. It's not like the lie of the fake Darren is any sort of a long-term plan anyway. Like, I can't think of a single possible benefit for Alicent to lie to Rhaenyra here. Um, so yeah, I think that she did the right thing by, I mean, also it was kind of an involuntary reaction. She's just like, who is this? It's not like she was gonna pretend throughout the conversation with this kid that this is actually her son. Um, but yeah, so Rhaenyra's like, oh, you don't know this boy, and Alicent's like, no, no. Um, and then he says he blenched my hair, which I is like, does someone have any knowledge in like old language? Is blenched an old style word? Or is this just the George R. R. Martin tendency to add an N to a random word like nuncle instead of uncle? Uh, and then be like, oh yeah, he blenched my hair. Like, I don't know. I just thought that was very funny. Um, but yeah, it's uh it's a funny situation. So they have sent a fake Darren. It was Ormond Hightower's plan, and then is blanched. Okay. Uh, maybe it's an actual word. I've never heard bleached with an N in it, but that yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, wouldn't be surprised if it was an actual different word. I was like, oh, that seems like a weird one. Um, yeah, perfect tone, no root. Yeah, they did a good job. It has only been 2 days, but um, I have not blanched anything while cooking. I cook burgers and steaks and random things like that, but I don't recall ever having to blench anything while cooking. Um, but yeah. So yeah, basically Ormond has threatened this young kid that um they would hang the mother. Yeah, this subtitles did say blenched. Like, that is what he said, and that is what the subtitles said as well. But I was assuming it was probably just like a play off of the word bleached, like either an old version of the word, or like, you know, George being George and making something sound old timey. But yeah. In any case, this kid was told he is not allowed to speak, which is why he has been uh silent this entire time until the ruse is up. And he said that he had to stay silent even if he was about to be killed with dragons or his mother would be hanged. And so, no, okay, it means draining of color. I mean, that is fair. That is basically what happened. So yeah. Uh so we here now find yeah, vocabulary corner. That is true. Um apparently an alternate definition is to deceive or cheat, which yeah, that is interesting. That is interesting. Um but yeah, so then uh oh, and I also found this really interesting too, that this kid says, "Look, we're not a noble family. We're just merchants." Which is like why he felt powerless as Ormond was like threatening to hang his mother. And I find that very interesting because of the whole fact that Rhaenyra was feeding rats to all of the merchants and lower nobles. Like, he is from the same class that Rhaenyra was just disrespecting earlier in the episode. So that is an interesting little comparison between Ormond and Rhaenyra here. Um, but so yeah, right as we find out that Ormond is not all that he has seemed, and that maybe this war is not as over as they were hoping it was, we find out that the High Towers have taken Tumbleton, and that is what Ormond was up to. So this happens at like roughly a similar time. It probably took this guy a couple days to get there. So they could have taken Tumbleton a little while back. Um, but yeah, they've had Darren there for 2 days before Alicent was brought to him. So you do have to wonder, like, what would have been different had they discovered the fake Darren 2 days earlier by just instantly like locking him in the same room with his mother, and then she's like, "No, that's not my kid." Um, it would have been interesting. It would have been interesting. I don't know if it would have changed the outcome, but the outcome is that this dude with the awesome deep voice speaking High Valyrian is saying that the High Towers have taken Tumbleton and they've taken the people as hostages. And Rhaenyra says that she's going to burn them. And he says, but with them, you would burn your own people, mothers and children who look to you for protection. So, yeah, it's it's an interesting conundrum that Rhaenyra is going to be in at the beginning of the next episode. Um, so yeah, it's uh, it's going to be interesting to see how this is going to play out. But the episode ends with Rhaenyra burning all of the high tower, like banners and furniture and all of the things that had been installed that were using the wrong colors, the high tower colors with the Targaryen sigil. All of it is going up in a big fire as Rhaenyra angrily stares at it because she is ready to potentially go and burn some greens for real, not just their banners. And that is where the episode ends. So yeah, a great episode. We have had Rhaenyra catching up the entire way in the poll that we've been running this whole time. It is now 52% believe Aegon did a better job in their first few days, and 48% for Rhaenyra. So yeah, it's closer than it was at the beginning. We started out like well over 60-40, I want to say, for Aegon, weren't we? It was at least in the early votes, it was fairly heavily Aegon favored. And then as we have covered all of the problems that Rhaenyra has caused, she has somehow or another slowly caught up in the poll. But yeah, thank you guys all very much for joining me for this. If you have any other major questions, drop them now. I'm going to be wrapping things up. I can feel my voice starting to get a little tired from talking for nearly 3 hours straight here. Uh, but yeah, it's this is interesting as well. The Dragon Keepers work for the Targaryens, not the High Towers. Should they have told uh you say they should have told Damon and Darren about, or told Damon about the Darren business, but should they have? That's interesting. Because they also could in theory be seen to be working for Darren. I mean, he is also a Targaryen. So betraying one Targaryen to another, especially considering they potentially do work for Darren. I don't know. It is an interesting question though. Um but yeah, it is interesting. Um and yeah, they are, it seems like they are sort of a religious order or a cult basically. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know where their loyalty would lie when two dragon riders are like, one of them is deceiving another, right? And yeah, like if he had known, like he obviously wouldn't have recognized that it wasn't Darren because he's never met Darren because he was sent away to Old Town right away, and Damon spent most of the time on Dragonstone that Darren's been alive. So the timeline makes sense that none of these people have met, even though they are related, half brothers in Rhaenyra's case and nephew and uncle in Damon's case. Um, but yeah, it's if only they had known, if only they had actually known what their family members look like, it would have it would have never worked. But yeah, who knows? Who knows? But yeah, no, I thought overall a really good episode. Let me know in chat or in comments on a rewatch if you guys are making it to the end here, what you guys thought of the episode. I've really liked this entire season so far. I thought the first two episodes were a really good wrap up to all of the plot lines of season two that were sort of left open ended. And this whole episode, like this was one of the episodes where I was like, when it ended, I was like, oh dang, it's over. Like I wanted more. Um, and yeah, it's as I said, it a lot happened, all of it fully focused on Rhaenyra, but it was really an interesting look into the sort of pressure cooker that is trying to actually rule this city. So, yeah. And yes, the Rhaenyra did seem to at least think something was off, but they there's no way for them to know for a certainty that that it wasn't Darren. She did though give that little hint that she thought maybe something was wrong when she didn't think he would be that young. But yeah, that could be read as her maybe knowing something is wrong or maybe being more reluctant to kill him than than uh she would have been had he been older, I think. And yeah, the bird sculpture, yeah, that is also a potential clue because Targaryen would have probably been carving a dragon, right? Surely. Surely. Um And yeah, this is I feel like this is basically the start of season 3. I don't like I feel like the first 2 episodes were basically unchanged, like that is what we would have gotten at the end of season 2 if we had been given 10 episodes. I wonder if this is how they would have opened season 3 if we had had like all of season 2 in season 2, you know what I'm saying? Um like would they have done it this exact way where it's entirely focused on Rhaenyra, I think it works really well. I just question like would they have actually opened a season this way or would it have been more spread out among the different plot lines if this had been the actual episode 1? I feel like they may have done that because you kind of want to bring everyone back into all of the other plot lines. Um but the way that it is now where it is episode 3 of season 3 not episode 1, I feel like it works. It definitely works really well. Um, yeah, this is kind of how I feel about it. Is like they would have had to at least have a little bit more of the other plot lines had this been the return from a 2-year waiting period. But yeah, I imagine fake Darren will not be blamed for what has been done. Um, I imagine. I don't know for sure, but if who she if she feeds him to the dragon for deceiving her, we could have some full on Rhaenyra the Cruel going on there if she decides to actually just execute this kid because he helped deceive her. I would think she probably won't, but she has made a lot of bad decisions in this particular episode, so maybe those will continue. But yeah, very interesting to see. So yeah, thank you all for joining me. It has been fun. Um, I I do got to get rolling here. As I said, my voice is starting to go, and it is a little bit later on here. So thank you all, as I said, for joining me. Make sure to like the stream before you go. I will be back next week as well. I plan to do my normal stream like this, and then I might also do a second stream with some guests so that we can kind of talk about the first half of the season and go back and forth and all that good stuff. So, thank you guys all very much for watching. It has been fun hanging out with you all, and I will see you all next week.